Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this regular meeting of Fernie City Council held on December 9th, 2025. Kisu Kukit. We acknowledge that the city of Fernie is located within Kukinamakis, the unceded territory of Yakutat Nucleate First Nation. We recognize that we live and work within their vast lands. The Kanahunik are from Yakutat Nucleate and are members of the Ktunaxa-speaking peoples of British Columbia, Idaho, and Montana. With that, I'll call the meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. and I will actually come up to the podium for a moment. It gives me a great deal of pleasure and a distinct honor to announce this year's winner of the George S. Magic Spiritus Award, a significant unsung hero in our community, a true contributor, a person who rallies others around her initiatives and is a great team builder and a great friend. And this year's recipient is none other than the indomitable Jen Cronin. Congratulations, Jen. Anne's going to join us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
You don't have to say that.
I just want to say I'm truly humbled by this, and I am so grateful that there were people such as George Magic that carved this path for us. And he set the bar very, very high, and we all strive to meet that all the time. And I appreciate this very much. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, Jen, and congratulations. And all those folks sneaking out were Jen's guests at her reception earlier this evening. So with that, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder for the following staff recommendation. We have rearranged the agenda a little bit, but I think you'll see why in this recommendation. That the agenda for the December 9th, 2025 regular meeting be amended to move item 11.4, Planning and Development Services Structure Resourcing Report, before item 11.3, 2025 to 2029 five-year financial plan bylaw number 2527, amendment number 2541, 2025. And that the agenda of the December 9th, 2025 regular meeting be adopted as amended. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Shoesmith. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. And I'll ask for a mover and a seconder of the following staff recommendation that the minutes of the November 25, 2025 regular council meeting be adopted. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Nixon. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. I'll now open the floor to public participation and invite the public in attendance or participating electronically who wish to comment on items listed on the meeting agenda in accordance with section 3.7.3 of the procedure bylaw to address council, except speakers must not address council regarding a matter for which a public hearing must be held or has been held pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of the matter or adoption of the bylaw. Speakers must not address council regarding a permit for which public notice must be given or has been given pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of issuance of the permit. A speaker may only address council for a maximum of 3 minutes, and speakers are asked to state their full name and community of residence upon approaching the podium. And our corporate officer will keep time, and she has a yellow card for 30 seconds left and a red card for time's up. So thank you.
Your Worship, our first speaker this evening is Elena Ansomo.
Welcome.
My name is Alina Anselmo, and I live here in Fernie. I am here as a Prentice Park supporter, but also as someone who cares deeply about mental health in our community. Cervell Field is not just a piece of land. It is one of the most accessible green spaces for one of the most densely populated parts of Fernie. Kids can walk there after school, families can stop in after work, seniors can sit and watch a game without needing a car. That kind of easy, everyday access to a park is rare and incredibly valuable. Research keeps showing that nearby green space is not a luxury, it's a mental health protection. One large review found that people living in areas with more green space have a significantly lower risk of depression and anxiety. Another study found that neighborhoods with the least green space had about 1/3 more diagnosed depression than those with the most. That means every park we remove from a neighborhood is not just about losing grass, it's about increasing people's stress and risk of mental illness. On top of that, Cervell Field is a real sports hub. Team sports and regular physical activity are strongly linked to a better mental health for youth, lower depression, lower stress, fewer behavior problems, and higher self-esteem. When you pave over a well-used central field, you are not just moving a diamond on a map, you're breaking up one of the easiest, most affordable ways for kids and teens to protect their own mental health. There's also the hospital connection. Studies going back decades show that patients who can see nature from their windows recover faster, need less pain medication, and report less anxiety than those who stare at a wall or a parking lot or a fire hall. When patients can look out at trees, grass, and even something as simple as a ball game, it supports healing. Turning that view into an institutional building and pavement takes away a quiet, free form of therapy for people who are already having some sort of the worst days of their lives. You're being asked to decide whether Cervell Field stays a park and sports field or becomes something that can never give this neighborhood the same mental health benefits again. Once this green space is gone, we can't get it back. For the mental and physical health of kids, families, hospital patients, and future residents, I'm asking you to protect Cervell Field. Please keep it as a park and sports space and do not approve changes that would destroy it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Anselmo.
Your worship, our next speaker is Josh Garlick.
Welcome.
Hey, everybody. Josh Garlick from Fernie. I have two things that I want to talk to both on the agenda. First, I want to apologize for last week. I think I was a bit hard on you guys. You do have a hard job. You know, definitely roasted you a little bit too much there in public, so I apologize for that. But there's an old Japanese saying that once you realize you're on the wrong train, the best thing to do is get off that train and change direction. The sooner the better. We've got, you guys are going to talk about tonight, we've got what, $50 million next year we got to borrow? We have to borrow? We're going to be with 90 million in debt here in the next couple of years, and the citizens of Fernie don't even really know that. So we got $15 million on a fire hall, $15 million on a road that's about to wash out, $30 million just to get our sewer system, and another 90 million if you quote Kimberly's recent thing. So our taxes are going to go up like what, 25, 45% in the next couple of years? And we're all going to go into it with less green space and just arguing with each other? We went into this and just picked the easiest possible path. Last time I talked to you guys, I asked you guys to give us a quick little elevator speech on why you thought it was a good idea to use that location, to change it from park. And all of you agreed that it wasn't the best choice. You all agreed that there was other options, but here we are today. None of you up there said it was a good idea to use Prentice Park. You said it was the best or the worst of the best or whatever, however you worded that. So every one of you up there realized that. So now we're going to go into like $170 million in debt here in the next couple of years. And that's happening. And you've alluded that to the public a few times, Nick, and you guys can talk about it tonight. But people who are paying $5,000, $6,000 in taxes a year are about to pay $10,000 a year in taxes and with less park space. And we're not going to be getting along the whole time. If you guys are on the wrong train, maybe you should think about stopping. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Garlick.
Next is Juliana Bauer.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Juliana Bauer. I live at 5614 Van Leberg Road, and our business, Bauer Builders, operates here in Fernie. I'm speaking to agenda item 11.4, which you'll consider later this evening. The data in your agenda materials provides a very clear picture of the situation in the planning and building departments. You're currently working with a 21-week permitting backlog, entering 2026 with 56 permits already carried forward. Under current staffing, only 92 permits are forecast to be issued next year, meaning the city could process as few as 36 new permits in all of 2026. 36. In a community with Fernie's level of construction activity, that number is simply not workable. The memo before you outlines proposed staffing increases. And while these are positive steps, the analysis itself makes it clear they still do not bring these departments to the level of capacity needed to meet service expectations or eliminate the backlog. Even with the additional positions, the department notes that modernization, further staffing, and process improvements will still be required to achieve acceptable turnaround times. In contrast, some of the other staffing requests included in this item are not supported by equivalent operational data, nor tied to a documented service failure of this scale. I'm not here this evening to prescribe exact staffing levels, but I do want to encourage Council to base your decisions on the evidence in front of you. The permitting crisis is the only area in this report backed by extensive, specific, measurable data, and the proposed staffing does not yet fully resolve it. If Council wants predictable timelines, improved service levels, and a functioning development system, then planning and building must be resourced to the level required to actually meet the demand, not just partially relieve it. Before expanding staffing elsewhere, I urge you to ensure that the departments facing the documented crisis with real impacts on residents, builders, housing, and economic activity are fully addressed first. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Bauer.
Next, we have Debbie Poupart.
Debbie Poupart lives in Fernie, 1462 2nd Avenue or 195 15th Street, member of the Prentice Park Society. I'm not here to argue against a new fire hall. I'm here because I'm worried you're being boxed into a decision on Cervelo Field by the way the $795 in sunk costs have been framed in your report tonight. You're being told that if you don't move ahead with the first and second readings, these costs would largely need to be repeated. That makes it feel like you have no real choice. Approve the park site or be irresponsible with almost $800,000. But when you look at that $795,000 line by line, the story does not hold up. The $188,000 with Arcadius was for pre-planning and site selection. That report compared multiple sites, including 902 2nd Avenue, which fared slightly better for a site for a new fire hall than Prentice Park. It doesn't vanish if you decide Cervelo Field is the wrong place. The $72,000 for environmental, servicing, and geotechnical due diligence at Prentice Park is also not wasted. Those studies will still be useful for Prentice Park improvements in future years. You already have a phase 2 environment report for 902 2nd Avenue paid for by Heiko Socher in 2005, which found only 2 drill locations with possible contamination right beside the tracks, and the rest of the samples were within residential standards. The $35,000 to Kohler's is project advisory. Advice doesn't disappear because you take it to a better site. And the $500,000 in detailed design is for a modern fire hall of a certain size and function. A building like that can be adapted to 902 2nd Avenue, the land that was originally bought specifically for a fire hall in 2007. So no, it is not accurate to say most of the $795,000 must be spent again if you change locations.
Thank you, Ms. Poupart.
Next, we have Robbie Poupart.
My name is Robbie Poupart. I also live at 1462 Second Avenue or 195 15th Street, and I am a member of the Prentice Park Society. Your report that you're going to hear later tonight says you received 985 submissions on this OCP and zoning change, with more than twice as many people opposing the loss of Sorello Field as supporting it. Also in there, I read that in the OCP right now, it's reported that this is Fernie's premier sports park. So anyhow, tonight I'm asking you for something simple and reasonable. If you must move the bylaws forward, give only the first reading. Use that as a pause button. Take the time to really digest the documents, to look at 902 Second Avenue, and to reflect on whether largely repeating $795 is truly the choice in front of you, or whether that's just how it's been framed. You are not handcuffed. You still have options. I'd like to leave you with one last thought tonight. 902 Second Avenue, $700,000. Fernie's new fire hall, $16 million. Sorello Field at Prentice Park, priceless.
Thank you, Mr. Poupart.
Our next speaker is Jason, and I apologize for the pronunciation of your last name, Jason. I think it's Sauvé. Okay.
Jason Sauvé, 722 Fifth Ave here in Fernie. I'm here to talk about 11.4 and the staffing with the building department. I'm here with S2 Builders. Obviously, this summer, the building community and the city of Fernie came to a head with the length of time it was taking for permits. We had the CHBA get involved. We had a couple meetings back and forth. And through that, it was determined that we obviously needed some more staffing. Looking at the current plans where there's talk of one new inspector and an engineer, I think we need to focus more on the building department and the planning department. Currently, one of our inspectors is primarily focused on part 3 of the building code, which is the multi-unit around town, which leaves one for residential. Bringing one more inspector on puts us back where we were, where we still had a backlog of projects. I think it's going to take a bit more than that. And, or if anything does get to the building officials, it has to go through planning as well. Recently, in August, I submitted for a subdivision of a property here in town. I heard back from planning last week. So it was accepted. August 28th is when they took my application and recognized it. 3 months later is the first I've heard from them. So I don't see the timelines getting any better at this point. And while we did have the meetings, I don't have confidence that it's getting better right now. So.
Thank you, Mr. Sauvé.
Next is Alex Gill.
Hello, my name is Alex Gill. I live down at 841 7th Ave. I've been a member of this community since 2008 and worked in the construction industry in the Valley for the past 10 years. I'm here to talk about item 11.4. I'm here today because Fernie's building permit system is no longer functioning and the situation has reached a point where the council must intervene to restore basic capacity and predictability. 5 months ago, more than 400 concerned and affected parties signed a change.org petition calling attention to these delays. Homeowners missing construction seasons, trades sitting idle, employees laid off, no guaranteed return date, and local businesses facing cascading losses as projects stall and confidence erodes. Despite this, as of today, the turnaround time for building permit is approximately 21 weeks, with 56 applications in the queue dating back to July 14th of this year. Under current staffing levels, the city forecast will issue only 92 permits in 2026. This summer will not clear the existing backlog, nor will it deal with the new permits that will come in the new year. I'd like council to recognize what a 5-month permit delay actually means to the community. Projects stall, workers lose hours or face layoffs, contractors lose capacity, homeowners and businesses face escalating costs, and critically, new housing units are delayed in the community already struggling with affordability. Many homeowners have postponed construction in 2025 because of lengthy timelines and the reputation of the city of Fernie. These projects and many more are now likely to arrive in 2026, putting additional strain on a permitting system that's already overwhelmed. The fundamental issue is clear. Fernie does not have enough planning or building staff to meet demand. This is not an opinion. It is documented in the request for decision before you tonight, in the Development Approvals Enhancement Project, and in multiple industry submissions. Planning has been operating at a 62.5% staffing deficit since June, when your full-time planning clerk resigned. That hasn't been dealt with in the last 5 months. Building is equally constrained. It cannot meet even today's workload. The CHBA Central Interior recently wrote Michael Bornasi urging for the approval of additional building officials. Industry residents and the city's own analysis are aligned on the solution. Temporary measures have been attempted and failed. While Cloud Permit improves workflow, it cannot compensate for structural understaffing. Overtime is not a strategy. Process tweaks will not solve a capacity problem. This is the point where council's leadership becomes necessary. Tonight, the required actions are straightforward. Approve two full-time building officials, not one. One maintains the crisis, two begins to reverse it. Fully restore the planning capacity by funding at least one full-time planning coordinator. This will reduce the 62.5% loss since June in capacity. And additionally, implement the 3 requests made in the petition presented to you in July 15th of this year. Establish reliable, defined permitting timelines. Fully implement the DAEP recommendations, and provide transparent public reporting on progress. These steps are essential to stabilize the permitting system, protect local employment, reduce costs for residents, enable Fernie to deliver its housing that it urgently needs. Fernie cannot withstand another year of preventable administrative delays. The backlog is harming our economy, delaying housing, and undermining public confidence. Meaningful action must start now, and only council has the authority to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gill.
We have no one else on the participation sheet, Your Worship.
Okay, anyone online indicated? Nope. Sorry, are we promoting somebody? Okay.
Your Worship, it's, the name is Anthony. Yeah, Anthony.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, if Grizz Anthony, if you can state your full name and your community of
Oh.
residence.
Okay, yeah, I must be signed in with the hockey team there. Anthony Anselmo, 20 Mount Trinity Ave. Thanks for having me here. I just wanted to have a few comments around the Prentice Park Society Fire Hall tonight. Just want to remind, the community here that there is an active court case going on. And I really urge council to take a little bit of time. Don't rush through these bylaws tonight. Let's just pause and wait, see where this ends up before we make any other decisions. Another item I'd like some clarification on. In the report, it states that the majority of the written responses were delivered to City Hall in a package by representatives of the Prentice Park Society. I'm curious why staff felt like they needed to highlight that. 100% what we handed in was bias. That's our goal. That's our mission. to save Prentice Park. The city's objectives were to collect unbiased opinions. So real curious as to see why they had to highlight that in the report. Couple other points, wondering how the negotiations are going with the RDEK on funding. And again, just want to stress the importance around the intentions of first, second, third, fourth readings, and then bylaw adoption. They're designed that way for a reason. When decisions are this massive, have this much community impact, have this much information that was crammed on a Friday agenda package to come out and make decisions on a Tuesday, let's take our time. Let's maybe, if we have to, maybe just go through the first reading tonight. Have some soak time for council, for the community to take all this in. Let's not try and rush all those decisions tonight, the majority of those decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anselmo. Anyone else? No? Okay, thank you. And thank you, everybody. Thank you for all your impassioned presentations this evening. Item number 6, Committee of the Whole. Thanks for silencing your phone. If I could get a mover and a seconder for the following recommendation that council enter into Committee of the Whole. Moved by Councillor Shoesmith, seconded by Councillor Artie Kelly. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. And that brings us to item 6.1, the 2026 to 2030 financial plan, water and wastewater operating capital budget. Presentation from our Director of Finance. Mr. Burden.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. Good evening, Council. Hello, members of the public. Tonight, I intend to introduce for you the 2026 to 2030 water and wastewater budget. No direction from Council tonight. This is just an information piece. There will be a request for direction from Council at next week's meeting, which will be setting a rate increase and then direction to prepare a water sewer bylaws to come back to Council January 13th, I believe it is. This is the first year that we've split out water and sewer budget. The intent of this is that staff has identified a few things that are going to change the recommended rate increases for water and wastewater for 2026. And so with that being the case, if Council wants to increase rates, those bylaws have to be adopted by end of January in time for the Q1 bills. So that's the reasoning behind splitting out this budget and doing it earlier in this year's process. So the agenda, there's 3 main issues for water and wastewater. 1 is basic operating expenses. 2 is the capital plan for 2026 and the work we've done in our long-term capital planning and reserve projections. 3 is the potential for a wastewater treatment facility. So starting with operating expenses, generally they're pretty flat this year. There are some small increases to external contracts and building maintenance lines, about 20,000 each. This is to account for increasing system maintenance needs. The rest of the operational expenses are expected to increase on an inflationary basis. So the total operating expense increase for both water and wastewater, inflationary purposes only, is 3%. There is one major operating cost ask for Council to consider. The water utility specifically is understaffed with its team of 3. Urgent issues due to external factors like additional regulatory requirements or additional turbid events are happening more frequently, which reduces time to spend on preventative maintenance, and we're seeing that backlog grow. So one additional operator plus benefits would be approximately $115,000, which is a 7.5% water rate increase, which is just under $27 for the average single family home annually. Just for clarity, that 7.5% is not the property tax rate. That's just our water tax rate that affects our quarterly bills. This slide shows the proposed water capital projects for 2026. It's very summarized. A lot of these are in the year 2 budget report, which I'm also set to discuss later tonight. But if council has any specific questions on any of these 5, Ms. Weir is here to help with that. But that's the high level list of what we have planned for water in 2026. On the topic of capital and reserves, staff have spent a lot of time illustrating for council our funding gap, particularly with our linear assets. I'm going to have 2 slides here on water, 3 slides on wastewater, a slide on why this matters, and then a few slides on options for council to consider to start addressing this problem. So for water, we started by looking at our current linear assets, all of them, and assessing their value. The total value of replacing all assets right now is $149.3 million. Only 12.7 of that needs replacing right now, and 24.8 million will come up for replacement in the next 15 years. Our 2025 budgeted ending balance in the water reserve is only 1.3 million. This funding gap has been building up over the last century. This graph, there's 2 lines. The orange line is what ending reserve balances would be over the next 100 years if we had a sustainable level of funding to our water reserve, which at the moment for water would be just over $2 million annually. It's worth defining sustainable funding as funding that is spread across the life of an asset. In other words, users pay as their assets are consumed, which helps to encourage equity between generations. The blue line is what will happen at our current level of reserve contributions of 638,000. So at the end of 100 years, we'll be short $138 million or $1.38 million every year. Moving on to wastewater, this slide
Sorry,
shows.
Mr. Burdett, just
Yep.
for folks listening, that 100-year calculation is a standard in municipal government. Is that correct?
Thanks, Mayor Milligan. It's becoming a standard, especially the last 5 years as there's been a focus on asset management, which is important, particularly if you're applying for grants. You have to demonstrate to grantors that you have thought about this and have plans that go that long. So, 10 years ago, the standard was only to plan 5, maybe 20 years, but now focus is shifting longer term.
Thank you. Councillor Audie Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. CFO, just for clarity for the public, can you outline what exactly we mean when we say linear assets?
Sure. Those are basically all of our assets that carry our drinking water aside from buildings. So pipes in the ground. And really that's it. That's it. Yeah. Pipes in the ground.
Thank you.
Moving on to wastewater, this slide shows proposed wastewater capital projects for 2026. Again, I'll leave this slide up for half a minute. Ms. Weir is here, and some of these will also show up again on the year 2 budget amendment. For wastewater, the total value of all linear assets is $203.9 million. 7.1 million need replacing now. 48 million will come for replacement in the next 15 years. There's also an additional approximately 40 million needed for a wastewater treatment plant in 2028, 2029. This is our current Class D estimate, so that's plus or minus 50%, which again, Ms. Weir can speak to if council wishes. There is an upcoming presentation next Tuesday from Ms. Weir on the wastewater treatment plant compliance design project. And our consultants are currently developing an estimate with a higher level of cost certainty. And the 2025 budgeted ending reserve balance for wastewater is just 800,000. And Ms. Weir just messaged me and said I had a mistake there. The Class D estimate is plus or minus 25%, not 50.
Thank you.
So then this slide is the same graph that you saw for water, for our wastewater. Blue line, which is our current reserve contributions of just over 700,000, shows we'll be $230 million in the hole in 100 years. The annual sustainable level of reserve funding for wastewater is currently $3 million. And why does sustainable funding matter? I had this table in your report. It's trying to illustrate with very simplified math what the annual cost to replacing infrastructure would be with 3 different approaches to funding future infrastructure replacement. If you had an asset worth $100,000 and it needs to be replaced every 80 years and you saved money in an interest-free savings account, it would cost you $1,250 every year to save for that asset. If you placed that money in an interest-bearing account earning just 2% per year, you would need to save only $506 every year to replace the $80,000 asset, or the $100,000 asset, sorry. If you saved nothing and borrowed the money every time you needed to replace an asset, the annual debt payment would be $4,788 for 30 years, which if I try to demonstrate that cost over the 80-year period, it's the highest, coming in at $1,400 per year. So again, these numbers are very simplified, but that's the gist of how compound interest works versus borrowing money. So what can council do about this? One option, which staff will be recommending next week, is a 4% increase both to water and wastewater rates over the next 10 years, purely to increase contributions to reserves. Using this year's rates, that would be $14.51 annually for water and $19.55 annually for wastewater for the average single-family household. We'll obviously revisit this sustainability plan every year going forward, but after those 10 years, council could look at a reduction of the increase down to, for example, 1%. The second thing council can do, which staff is recommending, is to replace infrastructure that's overdue for replacement over the next 15 years. This will take the high-risk assets that was presented to council during the AMIP update in October and work on those assets over the next 5 years. And then years 6 through 15 will be aimed at assets that are beyond their useful life. This graph shows what would happen to ending reserve balances in 100 years with those recommendations on the previous slide. This is water. You can see the blue line goes above the sustainable line with those increases at the end of 100 years. This one would be the wastewater line after those changes. And while still negative, it does bridge the gap by $180 million, which is not insignificant. And I touched on this a bit earlier, but the last item for council to consider is likely having to construct a $40 million wastewater treatment plant in 2028-29. A significant funding source for this will likely have to be borrowing. There's an option for council to consider saving a small amount for this eventual expenditure now to reduce the future borrowing impact a little. So if council wanted, an extra 5% wastewater rate increase would be $23.5 per house and would raise an additional roughly $100,000. A 10% rate increase would obviously double those numbers.
And sorry, Mr. Burdett, that's a 5% on top of the 4% that you've just proposed.
Sorry. Thanks, Mayor Milligan. 5% on top of the 4% for reserves, on top of the 3% for operating inflationary increases.
Thank you.
To summarize these findings for council, for water, staff intends to recommend a 14.5% increase. There's the 7.5% one-time increase for a new operator, and then 4% increase to go to reserves and 3% for inflationary operating expenses. Wastewater is a 7 to 17% increase, 4% for reserves, 3% for inflationary, and then there's the option just discussed for council to consider to put some additional in reserves for the wastewater treatment plant. As the report noted, the long-term financial analysis and the IICP only include the water and wastewater linear assets and not the facilities that are also required to support the delivery of these critical services. That information will be compiled through an upcoming project titled Facility Asset Capital Plan, and these projections will be revised upon that plan's completion.
Sorry, for clarity, those projections will be integrated into this. I was a bit surprised that we don't get a full system sense of the full system cost because the facilities are out.
Yes, I mean, that facility plan will take a while too. And just like this one took a while. And this is part of all the work we've been doing to get much better data on all our inventory. So this is, one step in a larger process.
Councillor Audia Kelly and then Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks, Your Worship. So CFO, assuming we implemented a 14.5% increase and a 17% increase, can you give us an idea of what that would mean to the yearly bill for utilities for folks, please?
Thanks, Councillor Audia Kelly. It is there on the screen, but for water, if it's 14.5%, it would be just over $50 per average single family household annually. And then if you were to go the full 17% for wastewater, it'd be just under $80 per annual, unless I'm misunderstanding your question.
What the current fee is X, and these are additional to the current fees. So can you give me like the new total?
So I believe the current annual bill is $880 for the average single family house, around there, roughly. So if you were to increase by an extra $130, then you're looking at just over $1,000 a year for both.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. Just, I wasn't clear reading the report, and I'm still not sure I'm entirely clear after the presentation. But, we're talking strictly about linear assets right now and funding for linear assets, but the wastewater facilities and water facilities, they're also funded solely from our water and sewer fees. They're not general taxation and lumped in with the other facilities.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Shoesmith.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan, through the mayor to staff. For our next presentation on this, it would be nice if we had the numbers for what it would take to, say, close that gap between our orange lines and blue lines over the next, say, 20 years or something, as opposed to out the 100. Thank you.
Just for clarity, you just mean a larger increase?
Yeah, what would that look like to bring us up to where we're not running a deficit on those in, say, 10 years or something like that?
Sure. Yep.
Thank you, Bryn.
And, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Ramirez.
Thanks, Your Worship. On the same thought, CFO, maybe, I don't know if it'll show up in your further slides, but with regards to fire hall borrowing that might happen, and if we were to actually, let's say, take a debt-driven approach to closing the gap on both wastewater and water, what that impact might look like for the next several years. I just want to see what the contribution of fire hall is going to be and what's the contribution going to be towards waste and water, if you wouldn't mind.
In terms of annual payment for single family household type of thing? Yeah.
Yeah, something of that effect. And, it's almost like, if I have a debt-driven approach, maybe 3 lines that says so much will go towards wastewater, so much towards water, so much towards fire hall, and an alternative approach where you're not taking on debt.
what does that look like? Like something of that sort would be super useful.
Okay,
Thank you.
sure. Thank you.
Councillor McIsaac?
Thank you, Worship. I feel like I'm probably jumping a couple of steps ahead, but one thing I'm kind of curious about with regards to the increases for utility costs and per average household, does it scale linearly with growth? So as, you know, we're assuming that we solve our challenging planning problems and we get the kind of development that some of these people in the audience would like to do here over the next few years, as we add additional dwellings, commercial users, et cetera, do the utility bills for them scale? Like, is that additional costs on the system that are going to be more or less the same? In other words, let's say we added 20% more houses, would people see some drop in the amount of the utility increase because they're now absorbing some of that cost, or they just add the same amount regardless each time, and it would just, do you understand the question I'm asking?
I do. I mean, my initial response is depends on a few things like density of those houses.
Right.
Single family requires a lot more infrastructure than larger building. I mean, we currently just add it. There's no scaling involved, but I think I would like the week to maybe think about that and provide a more fulsome answer instead of just off the top of my head.
Yeah, that's completely fair.
Yeah. And it's also, again, because it depends, it's really hard to answer that accurately too. I don't see, and off the top of my head, I don't see the benefit for every ratepayer by more development just because we inherit more infrastructure too. So it's, you know, it's hard to use that as an argument to reduce other people's rates. But I will put some thought into it and bring that back next week. That's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because the addition of those assets, the moment we take possession of them, they start to depreciate and degrade, and they will contribute to that curve. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's part of how we're in this place to begin with, because of 100 years of development and not saving enough and inflation and all those problems.
Thank you. Councillor Nixon and then Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Worship. Just curious, in our first term, there was, whenever it snowed, we had all the operators that were supposed to be on wastewater and water were all hands on deck. And it was, they were doing snow removal for days. Are we still doing that practice at all? Is there still that practice going on? And will this new operator just be dedicated to that? That's one.
I will let Ms. Weir answer that for you.
Evening, Council. Now we have a dedicated water and a dedicated wastewater foreman who do not do any plowing. The wastewater team has 5 people, so the other 4 people are used for plowing in cases where overtime is offered, like where we're looking for additional staff based on the availability of the streets crew. So there's for sure one person in each of the utility teams that's not plowing, and then depending on holidays and availability and which day of the week our staffing levels change depending on the day of the week, we may pull from the water and sewer operators to assist with the plowing.
Thank you, Director Weir. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. My question is kind of in the similar vein to Councillor McIsaac. With, you know, increased density, are we also, for each linear foot meter, however we measure it, of sewer and water asset, is there like the end connection, does everybody pay the same? So if, you know, we've got an apartment building with 10 units, they're paying the same rate at their connection point as a single family house does at their connection point. Does that make sense? The question? I'm trying to understand the ratio, I guess, of users to our linear assets that we maintain, and how much density will benefit positively or negatively, or lack of density impacts that ratio.
Thanks, Councillor Hamilton. We do have different rates in the bylaw for different levels of use. So apartments do have their own rate, which is lower than single family house. but which would then on a density scale be higher than one single family house in theory. And then, you know, things like restaurants have their own rates, campgrounds, things like that. So those rates are considered with both use and density in mind. So when the bylaw comes in January for council, we can, you know, highlight those rates and have a look and see if council wants to adjust the ratios for those too.
I appreciate the, you know, the 100-year timeline and the way, you know, those graphs come together. I am curious though, that in water, for example, we have $12.7 million in high priority linear assets needing replacement, and in wastewater, 7.6 million. Like some of these obviously aren't going to wait for that. Those reserve contributions, are we currently protected against catastrophic failure in any of those systems, or are we faced with, are we going to be faced with a sudden cost?
Mayor, it goes through to the, yeah, those assets are beyond what's defined as their useful life, but useful lives are often exceeded. And so the longer we go, the more risk we're taking of catastrophic failure. But do we think that all of those assets are going to fail in the next 5 years, those high priority assets? I don't think so. You know, water pipes, if they were installed properly and in a good material, have oftentimes far exceeded their lifespans. So we're trying to address risk, but we're always accepting some risk. And that's why we're not suggesting, you know, that we fund all the high priority linear asset replacements next year. We're saying, how about in 5 years, so that we can spread that out, and we'll take some risk as we go.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you, Director Weir. I'm also curious, and I hesitate to raise it, but other communities' experience with wastewater asset replacement, Kimberley being an example, that was a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 contribution from the province, the federal government, and the community. Would we be in a situation where we could potentially make that part of our funding strategy?
Thanks, Mayor Milligan. I don't know, but I certainly hope that would be the case.
Okay.
4 or 5 years time.
Yeah, I know you wouldn't want to speculate at this juncture, but that it would be something we'd investigate so that
absolutely
our taxpayers wouldn't be, you know, on for the full burden.
That's the goal. And at this point, it's not impossible.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Other questions or comments from council? Councillor Ramnes.
Thanks, Your Worship. There might be somewhere in the report where you have actually stated what those $12.7 million and $7.1 million constitute CFO, but can you just refresh our memory here? Like when I'm saying I need to be replacing it now, what does now mean? Is it 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, or like right now?
Thanks, Councillor Ramadas. Those two numbers came from the AMIP report in October.
Yeah.
And that was defined as the highest risk assets.
And it's the same as what I see in IICP as well?
Yeah, sorry. Did I say AMIP? I meant IICP.
Okay,
Yes,
gotcha. Yeah.
And then, you know, staff's proposing that we work on those two numbers over the next 5 years.
Yep.
And so, but that council could adjust that timeline as well. But that's the proposal. And then when we were going through the rest of our assets, there's a sizable chunk of assets that are beyond their useful life now, but not necessarily defined as high risk assets in that IICP report. And so those are the assets that we're going to focus on after the 5 years. So years 6 through 15. And just, you know, there was the one project on the screen, $900,000. I forget the title, but that's part of like chipping away at these larger numbers.
Thank you. Councillor O'Day Kelly.
And just for reference sake, these are all applying to linear assets, and we're not talking about any of our buildings or other infrastructure. We're not talking about CNL right of way that was brought to us in March, looking for new grant funding at 15 million. We aren't talking about the recommendation to spend 1.1 million per year on our roads for the next 7 years, et cetera, right? So there's no doubt that we're going to be faced with some big costs. I think, and Director Weir can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's like 8.25 million for the lift stations that we need to work on. And we're getting a report about our wastewater system next meeting, correct? So one of the speakers earlier did allude to the costs that we're facing. So I think the community, you know, does really need to be cognizant of these things because there's some big bills.
100% true. Other questions, comments? Mr. Burdett?
I would just make one correction to what Councillor Adia Kelly said, that the CNL right-of-way project is one of the high priority projects in the IICP. So that one is included in these numbers.
Yeah.
Your worship, if I may.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were asked about giving a resolution so staff could pursue grant opportunities. So I'm guessing that that's something that staff are trying to do. But, you know, they can only do that if there is a grant that applies.
Thank you. Anything else? Thank you, Mr. Burdett. I won't say I'm looking forward to the next report. But looking forward to a bit more clarity. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
With that, I will ask for a mover and a seconder for the following recommendation that council return to the regular meeting. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Shoesmith. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. That brings us to item 8.1, development variance permit application number DVPA 616. A report from our acting director of planning, Mr. Similini.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just ask for your patience while I set up the slideshow.
And we did, Mr. Similini, actually actively try to remove the snowflake, but we were thwarted.
I actively typed up my notes this time too, so I'm not relying on the screen as much as last time. Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Your Worship and Council. Very brief report follow-up on development variance permit number DVP 616 for 1292 8th Avenue. At the meeting on November 12th, I believe it was, or 25th, Council viewed a variance proposal to vary the parcel coverage at the address from 35% to 45.59%, noting that the existing parcel coverage is already at 44.67 as an existing non-conforming parcel coverage, and also to vary the sun deck projection from 1.3 to 1.78 meters, noting that the sun deck projection, as we spoke about at the last council meeting, is actually would be considered a minor variance, but the parcel coverage is not. So we brought the whole thing together for council to see. What the project is proposing to do is build or extend the existing deck over by replacing the existing stairs over top of a ground floor entryway or a basement entryway. In this case, as you can see in the photo there, the overall impact to the neighborhood is extremely minimal or nil. So just bringing the variance back tonight. We did not hear any comments from any members of the public as a result of the public notice. So just bringing it back for council tonight to consider authorization of the development variance permit.
Thank you, Mr. Similini. Questions, comments from council? Seeing none, I'll ask our corporate officer to read the recommendation.
Your Worship and Council, the staff recommendation is that Council authorise the issuance of development variance permit application number DVPA 616 for 1292 8th Avenue attached to this report.
Moved by Councillor McIsaac, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. And staying with you, Mr. Similini, official community plan zoning bylaw amendments, fire hall.
Thank you again, Your Worship. I'm here tonight to provide info and continue a conversation with council to assist council in making a decision regarding the OCP and zoning amendments that will lead to the construction of a new fire hall at 1500 Fifth Avenue, a portion of Prentice Park. A quick summary of the presentation tonight. Just want to take a quick look at the timeline involved with the bylaw process, the bylaw amendment process, and then look at both bylaws 2535, which is the OCP amendment, and 2536, which is the zoning amendment. Also touch on the compliance with corporate strategies. And then we'll get into a summary of the early consultation that was requested by council. And then finally, discussion of the recommendation. So first, I want to summarize the timeline of the OCP amendment and the rezoning process. This process is in compliance with provincial legislation, specifically the Local Government Act, and fits into the overall project schedule. On November 12th, staff reported to council on the OCP amendment and the city's requirement that is legislated under Division 4 of the Local Government Act. At that meeting, council resolved to receive public input on the proposed OCP amendment from November 14th to 24th. And they also resolved to have staff provide a summary of that input received for consideration, which is presented in tonight's staff report as well. At tonight's meeting, in addition to council considering the public input, staff is recommending that council give first and second readings to the OCP and zoning amendment bylaws. If first and second readings are held or given, a public hearing will be scheduled for the bylaws, and a notice of that public hearing will be mailed and hand-delivered to property owners and residents within 100 meters of the property, as well as advertised in the free press, online, and at the city's public posting places, which are the bulletin board across from the post office and at City Hall for all members of the public to view. Once the public hearing is scheduled, it will be held at a given date. After that public hearing, the bylaws can return to council for third reading. Once the bylaws are given third reading, they will be sent to the Ministry of Transportation and Transit for review. This is required for the zoning bylaw. However, we will include the OCP as well for MOTT to review. Once MOTT approves the bylaw, they will return to the bylaws will return to a regularly scheduled or special meeting of council for adoption. And once adopted, the project can proceed with the building permit process. Unfortunately, our current OCP, which was adopted in 2014, is largely silent on fire and emergency services. In fact, regardless of the location of the new fire hall, an OCP amendment would be required, both specific to whatever location is chosen and for the whole of Fernie as well. Bylaw 2535 proposes to amend official community plan bylaw number 2331, specifically adding Fernie Fire Hall to the text of section 9-B.9 of the OCP to recognize Fernie Fire Hall as a key institutional use. Amending the future land use map, Schedule B of the OCP, to change the land use of the portion of Prentice Park that is needed for the construction of the fire hall from parks to institutional, and amending the parks, trails, facilities, and open space network map, which is Schedule D of the OCP, to remove the portion of Prentice Park that is needed for construction of the fire hall from park, and to symbolize the location of the fire hall on that same map. Like the OCP, fire and emergency services is not explicitly referred to in the city's zoning bylaw, which was adopted in the mid-90s. I believe it was 1997. Bylaw 2536 opposes to amend the zoning bylaw specifically to include emergency services as a permitted use under the public institutional zone, and to amend the zoning map, which is Schedule A of the zoning bylaw, to change the zoning designation from the portion of the portion of Prentice Park that is needed for the construction of the fire hall from P2, Parks and Open Space, to P1, Public Institutional. So when staff are making recommendations to council, it's important that we use our corporate strategies as foundational guide. In this case, council's strategic plan and the city's leisure services master plan were especially relevant. So as I noted, this project is consistent with council's strategic plan, specifically quality services. So a purpose-built fire hall is critical to delivering dependable, sustainable services that meet not only the needs of the community, but provide for a stable emergency responder service for one of the fastest growing visitor corridors, being Highway 3 in Canada, and to enable sustainable growth of our region. A livable community. The provision and operation of a purpose-built fire hall and the protection it provides makes Fernie more livable. With the OCP amendment, rezoning, and ultimately the project will result in the loss of one baseball diamond, staff believe the value of a purpose-built fire hall in this location and the additional budget allocated to the upgrades at James White Park support this objective. Organizational excellence. Advancing the fire hall is required to promote organizational excellence. A proper facility is key to the basic fundamental requirement of excellent fire services, or excellence in fire services, emergency response, and emergency management. For example, we are experiencing significant challenges with equipment due to the facility and environment from which it is operated, and the new purpose-built facility will assist in supporting exemplary service. Next is Leisure Services Master Plan. The plan does note that the city should consider the old Coal Creek landfill site for centralized playing field area to replace the existing baseball diamonds at Prentice Park and James White Park, and this is being discussed by staff. And lastly, not noted in the presentation as much, but the community working group for the fire hall, it's worth to note that their last meeting on November 20th, they made a resolution to support the OCP and zoning amendments, and that group was chosen to represent the community as a whole. So early consultation in the form of online and handwritten submissions from the public were accepted from November 14th to November 24th. In total, 985 pieces of consultation were received. Of those, 568 were via the online submission form, and 417 were handwritten. It's important to note, as was discussed earlier tonight in the public input, that the majority of handwritten correspondence was dropped off in a package by members of the Prentice Park Society. One of the major benefits of early and ongoing consultation during an OCP amendment process is that it creates space for real dialogue, not just a simple yes or no vote like in a referendum. Instead of being limited to a binary choice, residents can share the reasons behind their support, concerns, or suggested changes. This richer feedback helps council to understand why the community feels the way it does and what values or interests are influencing that perspective, which is why the input opportunity specifically asked for feedback on the proposed amendments and not simply whether you are in favor or opposed. Ongoing feedback also gives staff the opportunity to refine draft amendment bylaws by incorporating what they hear from the public. It allows for clarification, adjustments, and the chance to address misunderstandings early before bylaws are finalized. Just as importantly, analyzing emerging themes from public input helps staff tailor communications to educate and inform residents as the process continues, particularly when concerns raised may have already been addressed in earlier stages. So I want to go over some of the sort of the general themes of the comments and concerns that came up, and we can kind of have a discussion about them. But I do have some information as well regarding them. So the first concern is why are the OCP and zoning amendments happening now as opposed to before or later? So an important point is that there was a right of reverter on this property until November 1st, 2025. Planning for the fire hall is one thing and getting like the building designs and everything ready, but actually physically changing the property's zoning from something that the right of reverter supports to something that it doesn't. We didn't want to move forward without that right of reverter being removed first. So that was a major contributing issue. And also the OCP and rezoning process was originally scheduled to go after the borrowing referendum happened. It's also important to note, as I noted earlier, that regardless of whatever site is selected, an OCP and zoning amendment would be required for the desired use of the fire hall. Second was issues in trust and transparency related to the overall fire hall process. The process of site selection is well documented and publicized. This included extensive public and stakeholder input, which helped council make their decision. The city is also following or exceeding legislated requirements with all processes, including this OCP and zoning amendment. There's also questions surrounding the acquisition of Prentice Park and some talk that it was donated. Also important to note, Prentice Park was not donated. It was purchased in 1972 by the city from Crow's Nest Resources, or Shell, for an amount of $40,050. Just as an aside, with inflation, that would be approximately $300,000 today. So probably not what the property is worth as a whole, but still real money nonetheless. Next, the ball diamond replacement plans and timelines. The budget of $95,000 for James White Park ball diamond upgrades was informed by requests from the ball user group and approved by council in a report from the Director of Engineering and Public Works on July 8th. This work is anticipated in 25-26, and the budget will cover costs of shale replacement at the remaining 2 adult ball diamonds in the spring of 2026, fencing improvements, infield preparation equipment, batting mats, and additional top dressing material. This budget does not cover the costs of a landfill feasibility study as recommended in the Leisure Services Master Plan from 2013. However, that is something that staff is bringing forward in the 2-year budget look-ahead report coming from the Director of Finance. There is a very important argument to maintain green space. We did a GIS desktop exercise that told us that there was a total of over 173 hectares of land classified as green space or park that's owned by the city within the municipal boundary. The proposed fire hall site is approximately 0.6 hectares, so this represents about 0.35% of our total green space that is owned by the city. So an important statistic to note that we may be giving up some green space with this, but we're not giving up all of our green space. And also as noted above, if feasible, the landfill site, if it is converted to playing fields, it would represent a net gain in green space in Fernie. There has been some confusion about what is a dedicated park versus what is designated park. Parkland dedication is done through subdivision. When a developer subdivides 4 or more lots, they need to give 5% of their total land to parkland dedication. That is done through land titles and registered on an actual plan. In order to remove parkland dedication, it requires approval of the electors under Section 27 of the Community Charter, so essentially a referendum in order for that to happen. Park designation is done through OCP and zoning, what we're looking at today, where amending that designation requires the process that we're currently going through. So again, it's really important to note that Prentice Park is designated in a zoning or an OCP bylaw. It is not a dedicated park by a plan. Lastly, there were overall concerns related to the feasibility of the site, size, site congestion, helipad interference, those types of things. Site feasibility study addressed all of these concerns. For example, a flight path analysis was completed to ensure that access to the hospital helipad would be maintained after the fire hall is constructed and operational. The proposed OCP and zoning bylaw amendments are consistent with previous direction from council to proceed with the subject property as the site for the Fernie Fire Hall. Staff recommend that the subject bylaws move forward with first and second readings. This will advance the bylaws to a public hearing, which will be scheduled for a later date and advertised accordingly. Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Similini. Questions, comments from council? Seeing none, I will turn to our corporate officer and ask her to read the resolution 1, please.
Your Worship and Council, the staff recommendation is that Council give first and second readings to Official Community Plan Bylaw number 2231, Amendment Bylaw number 2535, 2025, to amend the Official Community Plan Bylaw number 2231 by amending the text of Section 9B9 of the bylaw to include Fernie Fire Hall as a key institutional use, amending Schedule B land use designations of the bylaw to change the land use designation of a portion of Lot 1, District Lot 4588, Kootenay District Plan 8097, except part in plan NEP 21661, Prentice Park, from parks to institutional. Amending Schedule D, Parks, Trails, Facilities and Open Space Network of the bylaw to remove the area shown as park on a portion of Prentice Park, and amending Schedule D, Parks, Trails, Facilities and Open Space Network by inserting a facility labelled Fernie Fire Hall.
Mover, Councillor McIsaac, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Discussion? Councillor McIsaac?
Do we have a designated date for the public hearing yet? Has that been picked?
Not yet, Your Worship and Council, not yet.
Please. No.
Okay, thank you.
Other discussion? Just because it was raised in the public participation period, Mr. Boranowski, the petition before the court, that will be heard when?
Our understanding is that the initial temporary injunction petition is being abandoned, and that all parties have agreed to move forward hearing the substantive matter, being the judicial review and related matters to the petition in late January. There's a window of dates called NASIs in the January 19th assize, so meaning sometime after January 19th.
Thank you. Further discussion. Councillor Audie Kelly.
Because you've raised it, Your Worship, waiting for that to happen, what does waiting, pausing the readings do to the overall project schedule? And does it have any impact on, like, what is the timeline exactly, so we're all really clear, between first and second readings and a hearing? I'm not 100% clear on that myself.
Yeah, Your Worship, through to council, there are minimum timelines under which we have to advertise a public hearing. In this case, we haven't scheduled a public hearing yet, and I'd imagine it would be sometime in the new year. So we would have enough of a span. It's 10 days of a notice before a public hearing is held. In most cases, anyways, because of our timelines with advertising with the free press, it's usually at least. There's usually one council meeting that's missed, so there's a gap of one meeting, so it's essentially a month from the time that the first and second reading is given to the time that the public hearing is held. Does that answer?
Councillor Rodas?
Sorry, Your Worship, it didn't answer the question really. Like, if I may, Councillor, what you were saying is why now, right? Like, could we not wait till the judicial review happens, all those legal proceedings complete before we make this decision? Is that not what your question was?
Yes, thanks, Councillor Ramadas, for helping clarify. Yes, that was part of it, because I want to know what it does to the overall timeline of everything. Should we take a pause with the first and second reading? So we need to advertise for a hearing for at least 10 days. So first and second reading, then you would have to advertise for at least 10 days. Is that, did I understand that right?
That's correct, but like there's no other end, so it doesn't need to be like at like 30 days, or like it's day 1 through day 10, then you have the public hearing, but you could be 40 days and have the public hearing. So it's just a 10-day advertising timeline. You need to advertise at least 10 days before the public hearing.
So the soonest you could have it would be
This,
the 11th day.
yeah, like the soonest we could have it would be in theory on December 20th.
Yeah. But sorry, Mr. Stimley, based on what you said, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, there's typically a meeting in between where this is immaterial because this isn't discussed, and then we're probably a month, but given Christmas, the Christmas break in the middle, I'm speculating here, we're probably looking at the end of January for the public hearing.
Your Worship, through the council, I would assume that would be around the date. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Borodowski?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to confirm staff are not proposing or pursuing setting a public hearing before the end of the year. Our goal is to provide time for proper notification Our goal is to provide time and support for council and to try and make sure that we enable council with their varying schedules to all attend and participate in to the best of our abilities. So we're looking at all of that to try and time this in the new year. I would like to just add that the schedule of concern from staff's point of view, having been given direction by council to advance this project in this location, is to advance construction start. We were targeting April. In advance of that, we want to sign a construction contract in late February. So that would be a tight and hard deadline from our point of view to advance this based on our planned schedule.
Thank you, Mr. Bornowski.
Yes, sorry, and if I may, Your Worship, just to note that once first and second reading are given, like there still can be a discussion about the bylaw. That doesn't lock the bylaw in.
Thank you.
Just so council and the public are aware of that.
I very much appreciate that. That's important clarification. Other questions, comments? Seeing none? Oh, Councillor Ramirez.
Thanks, Your Worship. I still didn't get my question answered here, Your Worship. Like, why wouldn't we let the judicial proceedings go ahead, CAO, wait for the conclusion of that, and then come to this file? Like, why now?
Councillor, if you're seeking legal advice and commentary from me, my strong recommendation is that as per the charter and our practice, we have that conversation in camera. And my recommendation is based around the project and the direction I have from council so far around advancing. It may not be a pleasing answer in this moment, which I appreciate, but quite frankly, it is foolhardy to discuss legal advice in an open meeting without council present for all involved.
Thank you. Councillor Shoesmith.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. While I understand what I've read in the reports here and what I've received in my emails, and speaking carefully, as indeed there are things with legal counsel involved, I still, at this point, don't feel very great about advancing this so quickly, and feel that even though there is a tightened deadline because of it, I don't think that I'll be supporting this recommendation, at least until we hear back from legal or from the process.
Mr. Bornowski.
I'd like to clarify for Councillor Ramadas to his question. Technically, not knowing the full timeline of the proceedings and acting on council's previous standing direction to advance the project, we're recommending advancing the project. I can't guarantee when those proceedings begin and or end, given the provincial court system. And so I can't guarantee that they're completed in February in time for a comfortable timeline to progress through readings, public hearing, notification of Ministry of Transportation and Transit, and then eventual bylaw adoption, and then contracting, and then breaking ground. I hope that that provides a little more of a satisfactory answer.
Thank you, Mr. Bornowski. Councillor Ramirez.
That was a better answer. Thank you.
With that, I will call the vote. All those in favor? Myself, Councillor McIsaac, Councillor Hamilton, and Councillor Nixon. And those opposed? Councillor Shoesmith, Councillor Otta Kelly, and Councillor Ramirez. Sorry, do we need a recess? I'd ask you to keep the commentary down, please. I'll ask our corporate officer to read the second resolution, please.
Your Worship and Council, the staff recommendation is that Council give first and second readings to zoning bylaw number 1750, amendment bylaw number 2536/2025, by amending the text of the bylaw to include emergency services as a permitted use in the public institutional zone, and amending Schedule A zoning map of the bylaw to rezone a portion of Lot 1, District Lot 4588, Kootenai District Plan 8097, except part in Plan NEP 21661 from P2 Parks and Open Space to P1 Public Institutional.
Mover, Counselor Nixon, seconded by Counselor Hamilton. Further discussion? All those in favor? And those opposed? Same as before. Thank you. We will take a 5-minute recess at this juncture. Thank you. If we could reconvene, that would be very much appreciated. Councillor Nixon? Councillor Shoesmith? Oh, Councillor McIsaac? No, not at all. Thank you, Ms. Rhodes. Welcome back. And we are at under business 11.1, Fernie and District Historical Society Partnering Agreement 2026. Report from our Acting Director, Corporate Services, Ms. Neal. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll just pull up my presentation. I'm before you this evening to present the Fernie and District Historical Society Partnering Agreement Extension. And this report is for Council's consideration to enter into a 6-month partnering agreement extension with the Fernie and District Historical Society for the provision of municipal services, being heritage services, which is defined as developing and delivering heritage programs and services, as well as museum services, which is defined as developing and maintaining collections, and as well as curating exhibits and developing public and education programs, as well as the downtown guest and visitor services, where they welcome tourists to the historic downtown Fernie and provide information related to Fernie history, attractions, services, and businesses. So this is here this evening because in 2022, the city and the Fernie District Historical Society finalized a 3-year partnering agreement for the provision of those services for an annual contribution of $52,000 to support the delivery of the Heritage Museum and Visitor Services. And this agreement expires on December 31st, 2025. So the extension for 6 months is before you to consider ensuring the continuity of those heritage services, museum services in the downtown guest and visitor services during the 2026 budget cycle. And then to help also support a smooth transition into a future multi-year agreement that is proposed to align with the Fernie Heritage Strategic Plan. Key terms of the drafted agreement that is appended to the report today includes a funding for $26,000 for 6 months, which mirrors the annual contribution of $52,000. And also it also honors the request that came from the Fernie District Heritage Society earlier this year, in October 10th, 2025, where they requested an increase in their annual funding to $65,000 for a contribution from the city. So providing this 6-month allows for the requested increase to be considered throughout the budget process, where there is an intentional guideline for the financial assistance to organizations, clubs, groups, and individuals that will be brought forward through that budget process. The drafted agreement before you was drafted by legal counsel, and staff is recommending that council endorse the 6-month extension of the partnering agreement with the Fernie and District Historical Society for the continuity of the services that they provide, and then also that the mayor and corporate officer then be authorized to execute the agreement following the completion of the public notification requirements. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Neal. Questions from council? Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. I was going back through my notes trying to make a bit of a table, if you will, but I'm curious, the other agencies and organizations that we have partnering agreements with, when do their agreements typically renew or expire? are we start working towards standardizing that? Like we're working to standardize all of our leases, and my rationale for that is, if we've gotten someone coming in the fall asking for an increase, that we try and get them all to be renewed May, June, sometime once we've actually completed our budget discussions.
If I may, I would have to bring that information back on when the timing of the other agreements expire, and I'm not sure if DAO wants to add to that at all.
No.
Ms. Neal is correct. They do expire at different times. And we have tried a different approach in terms of having community partners come in and present on their activities and budgets in advance of the budget season, which is in most municipalities already quite a progressive step. They tend to be a bit of a hot lunch, and we've brought them into at least a good practice. But I do agree, coordinating them and renewing them on a consistent rolling calendar would be ideal as a long-term outcome.
Councilor Ramirez.
I'm just speculating, Your Worship. I think it has got something to do with that disruption in 2020.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're sort of out of sync as a result. Sorry, was there anything else from council? I was reminded this morning that when the Fernie District Historical Society presented their annual update with their KPIs, et cetera, that they're no longer providing visitor services. And it's also been pointed out by our corporate officers that the agreement still includes visitor services. So I've asked our corporate officer to craft a recommendation that removes that from the agreement, so we can, because as I recall, Mr. Polymeric said, they may even consider removing the sign that says that on their facility. And I think it's unfair to have an expectation for something, one, that we don't fund, and two, that they don't deliver. I know they deliver it sort of ad hoc when people ask, is there a good place to eat, or is there a good place to stay? They do that, and that's great that they do that, but they do that more as a public service. And I wouldn't want to hold them to something that would be ultimately unfair. Councilor Roddy Kelly?
As I recall, Your Worship, I think you suggested that they remove the signage from their window. But I think that they are called upon a lot to give people visitor information, and that they really aren't actually compensated for it in the same way that the visitor information center is, yet they are doing some of the lifting there. So I agree with you. Like, I think that we need to be really more clear about that. If they're going to actually do it, then it should be part of their compensation.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but they're not doing it, like not officially. And so I wouldn't want to put them in a position that they're held accountable to something that they're not being compensated for. Mrs. Neal.
May I? And this drafted extension was drafted with our legal counsel as well, with a full understanding that this was for 6 months to get through the budget process, to consider their funding ask, and then to have more fulsome negotiations for a longer term agreement. And the recommendation from our legal counsel was to keep the agreement as status quo, which one of the definition of services in the agreement is downtown guest and visitor services, which shall be defined as welcoming tourists to historic downtown Fernie and providing tourists with local residents with information related to Fernie history, attractions, services, and businesses, and working in conjunction with the city, Fernie Visitor Information Center, Tourism Fernie, and partners to ensure alignment of messaging and promotional products to be ensured.
Yeah, which I'm kind of uncomfortable with, because that's a holdover from a time when they were actually receiving some direct compensation from the Visitor Services Fund from the partnering with the chamber to do that, and they don't do that anymore. And I think it's kind of unfair to place that expectation on them. I like what they're doing now. They do it ad hoc. They don't make stuff up, which I'm grateful for. But at the same time, even in this interim agreement, I'd rather it wasn't there until such time as we negotiate a full agreement with them. Other comments, questions?
With that, I'll ask our corporate officer to read the recommendation.
Your Worship and Council, the staff recommendation is that Council direct staff to amend the partnering agreement with the Fernie District Historical Society, FDHS, to remove mention of visitor services from the agreement, and that Council endorse a 6-month extension to the partnering agreement with the FDHS for the provision of heritage services and museum services as amended, and that the Mayor and Corporate Officer be authorised to execute the agreement as amended once the public notification requirements have been met.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Ramadas. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Neal. Item 11.2, notice on title policy, a report from our acting actor. He is a good actor. Acting Director of Planning, Mr. Similini.
I am a planner and I don't play one on TV, Your Worship. Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Just another brief presentation tonight regarding the notice on title policy that we are bringing forward. This did go to committee of the whole previously, and it was discussed and endorsed by Council at the time. So again, first presented to Council on July 15th, 2025, and we introduced, this is being introduced to address outstanding or unresolved building related issues. As we noted before, delinquent permits are a bit of a thorn in the side of our building officials, and speaking to what the building community noted earlier tonight, they do use up a lot of time, and that takes away from our building officials and our staff's ability to work on permit applications as opposed to dealing with delinquent applications. So this is applied to expired or inactive building permits, non-compliant construction, such as work without permits, and also work inconsistent with the BC Building Code. So again, we always try to work with applicants, but when we go through the process of communicating and that communication breaks off, or if those things aren't addressed, then we move towards a notice on title process. So again, benefits of this, increased department efficiency, reduced municipal liability, increased transparency, enhanced public safety, and increased level of service. And again, that increased level of service should result in lower building permit turnaround times. So the process, this is just the notice on title process coming through Council. So the process before this is a series of notifications and communications with the applicant. Again, we send them a notice saying that their permit is expired, for example, and give them a certain amount of time to respond. And if they don't, we send them another notice and send them another notice, and then end up bringing it forward to Council. We also notify the applicant or the permit holder 30 days before the application comes to Council for a notice on title. So stage 1 is to initiate the process. Stage 2, a request for decision to Council. Stage 3 is a letter to the property owner, and then stage 4 is a final Council decision. And then again, there's several stages after that where the notice on title, once Council makes a resolution to put a notice on title, that notice on title is sent to the land title office, and that notice on title can live there forever until it's taken care of. Once it is taken care of, it can be removed with the land title office. So that is sort of the process. And again, if it helps for us, because once that notice is put on title, we're done with the file. If the applicant comes back and applies for a building permit to take care of it, then we handle that building permit as a normal building permit would. And then eventually the notice on title can be removed. So a notice on title puts like pressure on a property owner, for example, to potentially apply for that permit and get the work done. Especially if they're like selling their home or something like that. The notice on title can be a hindrance to property sales, for example. So our recommendation tonight is that Council adopt the notice on title policy. Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Council.
Thank you. Questions, comments from Council? Councillor Schuppan.
Just to point out to those in the audience and those listening online, all of these dead permits sitting around actually do cost the building officials a fair amount of time every year, as they have to review each and every one of them. And there's a pile several hundred deep. So this is one small step in attempting to free up more inspector time.
Other questions or comments? Just a couple for me, Mr. Similini. In the policy on page 2, corporate officer, corporate administration team under responsibilities. Under council responsibilities. There is item 3 is pass resolutions authorizing filing or cancellation. And I have been at the regional district where people have come and actually pled their case in terms of, undue hardship. There seemed to be a reasonable reason why they hadn't completed the work and they wanted an extension. Is there the opportunity, the way this is written for council to grant an extension, say a 6-month extension for completion?
Your worship, through to council, and maybe the corporate officer can chime in here as well, but I believe that council could make a resolution to withhold a notice on title for a certain amount of time to give an applicant more time to complete. At the end of the day, we want compliance, right? We don't want to put a notice on title.
Yeah.
So if someone were to come to council and say, I missed the boat on this and I'd like to rectify it, and council would give more time, we would encourage that as well, because it does take care of it, albeit last minute, but it does take care of the non-compliance. So
Okay, so just the way the policy is written, it's not binary, right? We could provide a extension.
That's correct, Your Worship. We
Thank
can
you. Yeah,
definitely do that. Yeah.
Sorry, I appreciate that. Simply because I've seen that at the regional district, and typically if somebody comes, often they don't. Many people, honestly, I get the impression they don't care. But if somebody comes and pleads their case, they almost always get an extension because they've made the effort. They've provided a reasonable explanation as to why they find themselves in it. So I just wanted to check that we had that flexibility.
yeah, your worship, that's a good point, and maybe something that we can have a sidecar to, or maybe even amend the policy in the future, as we talk about the length of extensions or something along those lines. The interesting thing is when you're dealing with building permit applications and actually finishing a project, we don't know what that timeline could be, right? Like depending on the scale of the project or what needs to happen. So if you gave 30 days, it might take 90. So it's one of those things where maybe worth a little bit more discussion in the future.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And also, as you've said, the individual won't be surprised that it's coming before council because there'd be ample warning.
Yeah. Yeah. And sorry to interrupt, Your Worship. Go ahead.
Which is also the case in that circumstance. Yeah.
And I mean, we can have.
Sorry, that was, I apologize. What I wanted to add was there is history. There will be history with the planning and building department. So we will have a sense of, we can have a conversation about whether granting an extension is reasonable or not.
Yeah, that's correct, Your Worship. And I mean, our internal procedure that sidecars this policy can have a timeline. If council decides to extend, we can say, okay, we'll give you 30 days to get your application in, and then we'll process it. And then if you go away again, then we'll restart the process, or whatever the case might be, right?
Yeah, thank you. Councilor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. I was just going to say that, and sorry, I apologize. I don't mean this to sound flippant, but there's not going to be a notice of entitle if council doesn't agree anyway. So it's straightforward as far as our ability to management that. However, having said that, I think there'd be good value in including some language in the policy perhaps later to give some guidance to council as to what's reasonable and fair, so that if we're going to grant extensions, that the extension is the same amount that we would give to anyone.
Yeah.
And we're not doing it on a case by case basis. Oh, you get a month. Oh, you get a year. So maybe some guidance on what an appropriate extension amount would be good. But I mean, since we're ultimately get to say yes or no, I feel that's covered.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I wonder, I had a brief conversation with our corporate officer earlier today about this is the policy. There will be a procedure that will support the policy, that maybe that's the place for it, because that could be amended without
without necessarily coming back to
If
council.
I may,
for
Your
approval.
Worship, the policy does state that council can defer, which in a sense is extending as well.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fair.
And then you're correct, with the procedure document, we can work those timelines in, as Acting Director said, into the procedure side of what staff do.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Councillor Ida Kelly?
Just following along in your sort of ask, Your Worship. So let's say council grants an extension. How will that impact the workload for the department, or will it?
Your worship, through to Councillor Audia Kelly. I mean, if it's another application that comes in, I mean, obviously that's another application that the department has to deal with. If it's a complete application, it goes into the queue and it's dealt with. But again, the end goal here is to receive those applications to close these files regardless. So in any case, moving forward with an application and getting that file closed saves time over having the file open and having to deal with it over and over and over again.
Yeah, and just from experience, the number of these that come before the regional district, I've actually been quite surprised about how many come before the regional district. The number of people who actually come and defend it is very small. There's, and I'm making numbers up, but if it was 25 of these, maybe one person has come to defend their case and ask for an extension. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? With that, I'll ask our corporate officer to read the.
The staff recommendation is that council adopt the notice on title policy CP 2025-03.
Moved by Councillor Hamblin, seconded by Councillor Ramadas. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Simley.
Thank you, Worship and Council.
Item 11.4, Planning and Development Services Structure and Resourcing, a report from our CAO. Mr. Barnowski.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one moment. Mayor and Council and remaining members of the community and the building and development sector. This is just an overview presentation. Happy to take questions throughout or at the end, whatever your pleasure is. As Council is aware, the report is recommending the addition of a number of staffing increases to bolster capacity in development services specifically. We're currently recommending the approving the allocation of funds for the conversion of our planning coordinator, who is currently a temporary 0.6 FTE, to a full-time FTE. That's a municipal clerk 2 planning coordinator position. Approving allocating funds to add 1 full-time equivalent building official position to address their capacity. And the approval of the allocation of funds to 1 full-time equivalent position in the engineering department to support development and infrastructure engineering. And then finally, to direct staff to incorporate the changes and related budget adjustments into the upcoming 2026-2023 financial plan process. And you will see that if these are advanced, this is coming ahead of the budget process. If these are advanced, Mr. Burdett has prepared his report later on in the agenda, anticipating that council is advancing it for simplicity. If council does not or modifies it, we'll have to do just a little bit of adjustment there. Very light on the background for the purpose of the presentation. The planning department oversees, of course, development services, long-range planning, and building inspection and building officials. That is a significant component of building and development services, but it is not the entirety of it. Engineering review, in particular for anything requiring a development permit or an HLDP or subdivision, and for the consideration and management of all the infrastructure we take ownership of over the course of development and growth, is another specific component that I will talk to a little later on. The department has now overhauled its stack of bylaws, its procedures for building permits, its tools for building permits. It does continue to see really consistent high volume of applications and high complexity applications, including more complex subdivision and development applications requiring development servicing agreements and other just more complicated tools to get things moving along. They are also continuing to roll out the second phase of cloud permit, which is the development module for subdivisions and development permits. Having modeled the revenues for 2025 based on the updated bylaws and fees. And having projected the applications and files they anticipate moving forward, we're recommending increasing capacity within that revenue stream to better meet demand. The proposed increase in the report is made to eliminate an impact on direct taxation to the municipality while increasing capacity within a conservative envelope. So this is within an area where we feel highly confident we can achieve full cost recovery for the positions being recommended to be advanced. We're recommending converting one casual building official position to a full-time BO. We would retain a BO casual for coverage. We don't typically at the city of Fernie have coverage when people go on vacation or go on leaves. We typically have double loading of the remaining staff. And so this is additional practice that we bring to the department. We are proposing to increase the temporary 0.6 coordinator to a permanent full-time coordinator. And then you'll see in the second section of the org chart, we are proposing adding a development engineer into the engineering and public works department. There have been a couple comments received by email and I think made during public participation period and elsewhere about this specific engineering or development engineer or technical review position not being fully funded or modeled. And I just wanted to clarify that the development procedures and fees bylaw and the building bylaw fees were specifically modeled to include the engineering capacity required to advance those files through our pipeline. And so indeed, this is already built into that fee review and is, from our point of view, based on those fee updates and is an appropriate use of those fees. It's what we projected and reported on when we updated those bylaws and what we used as a basis for the calculation of the fees. Rationale, a sector scan that we've undertaken does indicate that comparators function with 2 to 3 full-time building officials. Those like Fernie facing really significantly higher volume of applications and building permits to get through do have 3 or more building officials at times. But capacity for technical review and engineering referrals is at or beyond capacity right now. It's a bottleneck for throughput. We can add more building officials on the front end. Subdivisions, development permits, and others will hit that bottleneck as it comes through internal referral process for technical review. Technical capacity to provide analysis of servicing and infrastructure is also extremely important. When we think about capturing the infrastructure we're taking on board, entering it into our systems, supporting with analysis, working with our consultants on capacity analysis or modeling and basic asset management, data stewardship, we're currently not able to keep pace with that. And as I mentioned, the engineering review is included in the updated fees. In the report, I do acknowledge I wasn't extremely clear on that, so I'm trying to be explicitly clear on that. That was modeled in the fee updates and included in the proposal.
Councilor Ramirez?
Thanks, Your Worship. CAO, this slide is pretty insightful. Thanks for this. It answered many of my questions, but I still want to ask this. Have you done a scenario where, I don't know, hire 2 building officials or even 3 building officials and maybe contract out the engineering portion even more? Has that been modeled and has that been compared to what you are recommending here?
Mayor and Council, I haven't modeled specifically contracting out those services. Rationale being, from my point of view, it's beneficial to build that expertise in-house. And consultants generally cost about twice what an in-house engineer or senior technician costs. You'll recall when we look at our engineer of record or consultant of record contracts, we're paying in the 270s at times for engineers, 270 an hour at times for engineers to come and do that work, where we get a far more competitive rate when we employ someone in-house, and then we benefit from the knowledge development. But I have not specifically modeled the contracting out of it.
Further?
Thanks, Your Worship. As someone who pays for a lot of consulting engineers in my day job, I know, like, I'm not recommending that we go that path, but I just wanted to go back to some of the comments that we got from the public here with regards to the building community actually having a preference for having more building officials rather than just engineers. I see what you're saying here. You're saying that there's a bottleneck that is getting created in the engineering part of the equation. I appreciate that. Maybe I'm just spitballing here. Like, what if you went with an extra building official or two and also added an engineer? What would that look like?
The risk is that we don't have the volume of permits anticipated or modeled, and we move outside that ability to fully fund those positions with fee and permit revenues. And so what I've done is look at the memo provided to me by the acting director, what their targets or what their modeling suggests, and then we've scaled that down to where we feel comfortable that we're able to achieve that target with these resources without then needing to go to taxation or finding that we're running a deficit at the end of the year. You're not going to find me in a position of saying no to more staffing in development services, but I really do need to flag specifically where there are wait times around anything requiring servicing, anything related to a subdivision, anything a bit more complex. We're going to need engineering resources because we simply don't have those. If we cast our eyes over to Cranbrook or similar municipalities quite a bit larger than us, they will have 3-ish building officials, rely on some consulting perhaps or contracting for building officials or professional assurance through engineering consultants, but we'll have pretty robust development engineering teams, senior manager or a manager and senior technicians and junior technicians. And so they have that technical stack that they layer on when they get to a larger size.
Councillor Audie Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. And forgive me for saying it this way, but I'm just going to be blunt. We're regularly told that building officials are quite hard to come by. We have an opportunity here. I understand that there might be some risk, but I also think that there's maybe a greater risk in not staffing up. And if we did find ourselves with some capacity, was there not a sharing program that was going on? Like, aren't Sparwood and Elkford desperate for building officials as well? Like, why could we not staff up? And then if we have capacity, we can loan our building official out. It seems to me that, I don't know, I don't want to take the chance that we lose and then cannot replace. Rather, it's the economic development engine of the city. Period. You know, we talk about our housing shortage. We talk about all those things. It seems to me more risky to not staff it appropriately than it is risky to staff it appropriately.
Mr. Barnowski.
Thank you. And certainly my job as your employee is to try and balance those risks and look at your values and the strategic plan. And when we look at costs to the community, and the likely significant costs you're facing on utilities and an unknown tax increase at this point, I made a recommendation that is conservatively but confidently within the development and permitting and building, or development permitting and building permitting revenue bucket, but adds capacity to improve our performance. That's it. I'm making a conservative recommendation for you.
Councillor Hamilton and Councillor Shoesmith.
Thank you. My question was actually almost identical to Councillor Audie Kelly's. And I really appreciate your response and how you framed it. I hear what you're saying, but I also think that perhaps we need to be a little bit less conservative. I think right now, from what I've heard thus far, we'll see where the conversation goes, but I'm in support of the recommendation as presented. But what I would also like to see in our budget presentations is some of this modeling and some of these potential scenarios of adding another building official to try and get through some of this backlog, and then what the opportunity might be. I appreciate that it's crystal balling and totally potentially risk, but you know, what are the opportunities to rent out our building official rather than loan, so that we can make back some of that wage by sharing it and using that excess capacity that we might be building internally.
Councillor Shoesmith?
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. I do have a fair amount to say on this. So I won't get it all at once, but I will start with this report and its reasoning is entirely defensible and makes sense. I feel, however, several things about it. I feel it is indeed too conservative. I would like to see planning and building officials resourced, and I would like to see that funding stream stay within that department. If the concern is that we'll find ourselves overstaffed in there, we're in the room with people who have laid people off because they were overstaffed, because they were waiting on things. That's a perfectly normal thing to do. I mean, I would much rather rent an extra official out to other towns if that's possible, but at the moment we're so far from that problem. I think we have a backlog. It's growing. There's deferred projects. And you know, we always talk about economic development. It wants to happen. It's going to happen on its own. All the people will come from the ground up with all their ideas and implement them and build them if we have the reputation for being a smooth and easy place to do business. And right now, one of the biggest points of friction there is trying to get things approved and permitted. So I feel that while this is a good report and I like what it's saying, I think it doesn't quite go far enough. I think we should have an additional building inspector and supports for planning. I'd also like to point out that while I'm arguing for increased expenses, that there's a very real return on this investment in that we do get that fee money back, and every time we approve a project, we receive more taxation as something goes from an empty lot to a house or from a house to a better house. Thank you.
Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Your Worship. Sorry, I'm typing out my questions and so I don't forget too much. I'm okay with the plan. I think it's, as Councillor Shoesmith said, it's very defensible, seems very prudent, very careful. I'm using those words positively, by the way. Especially on the engineering side, we've already seen at this table examples where we've had proposed development that has been forestalled because of infrastructure problems, which we are not going to be able to solve if we don't scale up our engineering. So that has to be done. Having said that, we're growing pretty quickly, lots of potential projects. The problem that we're facing right now seems unlikely to get better before it gets worse. And so I too am concerned and certainly have heard the same as I'm sure the rest of council has, of a wide variety of people in the community who are being affected by this quite negatively in some cases. I want to sort of change the direction of questioning a little bit and say, from a planning perspective, what would change in the proposal if instead of a do your best, don't spend too much money approach, council actually gave a directive like, we would like to see the median number of permits approved within 10 weeks, right? If we gave a specific directive like that and said, this is what we're looking for, is an expectation in the building community that more or less half the time building like permit approvals and so on are completed within a fixed period of time. Would that change the strategy as far as hiring, whether it be permanent staff or contractors and so on? And in that same vein, but slightly different, the second question that I want to ask is, would the current proposal be able to maintain the level of permits that are coming in if the backlog was erased? So were we to go out and hire sufficient contractor help to catch up on the backlog over the next few months? Let's say the backlog was erased and our staff are just working on new permits that are coming in over the course of the year. Would the current proposal get through those permits in a reasonable period of time? I hope those were clear.
I'll ask Acting Director Cimolini to come and talk about the backlog and pace. What I would say is, yes, Council has been extremely mindful of expenses and revenues and staffing sizes as we've worked forward and wanted to look specifically at advancing permitting turnarounds. And so I've tried to balance those two values that have come through the strat plan, previous discussions, and the targeting of improving business or building permitting as a strategic objective. So I appreciate it. It is a careful, cautious approach that I know can be achieved without impacting taxation or without a risk to impacting taxation. If council wants to see a specific target achieved, setting that allows me to sit down with the director and team and say, look, this is the target. You have these resources. Are they enough or not? Do we go to council to ask for more, and how do we make that happen as quickly as possible? What we're doing now is trying to structure for what we see as a general good staffing level, given the volume of permits we're seeing coming in and the complexity and the organizational constraints that I know right now are in front of us.
Thank you, Mr. Boranowski. Through to council. So I guess the question in other words is if we could make the queue disappear right now, and we hired to the level that's currently proposed in the staff report, what kind of shape would we be in? Yeah, so we'd be adding essentially one more building official and an engineer to review applications. It's really important, and I think that to bring a little bit of context to the engineer position, that it is really important to building permits as well, because building permit applications do need to conform to our subdivision development servicing bylaw. So in lots of cases, a review of that bylaw in conjunction with a permit application is important. So when the engineering department is strung for capacity, oftentimes those reviews take more time, and that contributes to the timeline crunch. I mean, ideally, we would like to have somebody, a building official would like to receive a package that has already looked at that, right? And it's checked and it's good. So again, that position is really important to the overall process that we're trying to achieve. So just as an aside. That said, I mean, if you talk about adding one more building official to a team of two, you're adding essentially you're looking at maybe 25% more production. But again, keeping in mind that building official is new to the process, I would assume that if those permit applications keep coming in, the timelines would potentially creep. But again, it's a hard question to answer because we are putting new processes into place. And if you're adding new staff with new processes and a clean slate, I can't give an exact answer to whether or not we'd be able to achieve a 6 or 10 week turnaround timeline.
Yeah.
Thank you. I guess where I'm coming from here is I'm mindful of the fact that hiring new staff is it's a commitment. It's a long-term commitment. I would never want to be casual with the idea that we can just hire people and let them go on a whim. I wouldn't run the city that way. But having said that, there are contractor people out there. I'm also mindful of the fact that there are a number of areas within the housing realm in Canada right now that are actually slowing, and things like condominiums and so on. And so in trying to be mindful of taxpayer money, but also mindful of the fact that we want the new development, the non-market development, change development in our community provides more tax dollars. It's going to help pay for infrastructure. All these things are positives and goods. What I'm looking at here, wondering is, are there potentially expensive but short-term things that could get rid of a bunch of backlog, for example, without having to provide more staff than what is being currently proposed, so that over the long term we have a stable and an affordable planning development department and so on, but still bite the bullet, spend some money now so that we can try to winnow down the backlog. And I don't even know if that's possible. I'm asking the question at the same time.
Yeah, Your Worship, through to Councillor McIsaac, I'm not saying it's impossible, but there are definite complications to something like that. For example, if you bring in a building official to work remotely on a contract and they're just reviewing permit applications from home, we're still relying on our in-house building officials to do all the inspections. So the more permits that get issued equals the more inspections that our in-house building officials need to do, taking time away from them or their ability to issue their own permits, right? So there's those types of nuances that are important to note. And again, we've talked about this before. It's not just about getting the permits out the door. It's about everything that goes after that as well, with the inspections and again, hopefully with our notice on title process, we can sort of take care of those stop work orders and those types of things in a little bit more efficient manner. But again, there's so many different factors to bring in, and if we like, essentially we'd have to take that back and run some numbers and look at some potential issues and possibilities.
I do appreciate the complexity is a little bit like eating an elephant, right? It's one bite at a time. And there's a lot of critical paths in the process of doing development. I would hate to think that the complexity of that analysis is paralyzing our ability to start making changes in some of those areas, right? Or at least be a little bit more courageous. And like, if that means coming back to council and saying, hey, we think we can improve things by 25%, but it's going to cost this much money over the next year. Are you prepared to do that in order for the purposes of being able to meet the demand for the new permits that are going to be asked for next year? Like, I'd like you to come and ask me that question if it's possible. Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Brodowski, you had a comment?
Yeah, thank you. No, the comment I would make is a follow-up to Derek's. It's really challenging when you're speaking about your most senior unionized employees. Those are really coveted positions. They're very important to our local, to just contracting them out. You're not going to have an easy go of that when they see the opportunity to increase employed people. But certainly, temporary contracts for full-time employees are something we have done, of course. And there may be a middle ground then to immediately advance a full-time building official, development engineer, and then a one-year contract for a second full-time building official while we complete recruiting the new director of planning and development services and task them with achieving goals, task me with tasking them with achieving the goals the council is looking to achieve, which we're hearing. It's one of the three critical priorities the council discussed in the refresh of the strat plan.
Well, and that what you've just proposed feels like a good short-term compromise in terms of having the two full-time building officials up front and the engineering resource to create that throughput, and then see, because one of the things, and I'm very conscious of what Councillor McIsaac said, surge capacity is a problem because we don't want to be hiring and laying people off. Neither does the building community, of course, but that puts us in a position, I think, to see if we can improve the throughput and increase the revenue accordingly, such that we can then make a different decision when those dollars prove out. Anyway, sorry, I inserted myself there. We got a bit of a speakers list here. Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. I kind of feel like we're in upside down world right now. We have council that's asking for more staff, and we have staff being super cautious and prudent. And I totally appreciate it. I agree with Councillor McIsaac. Cautious, prudent. These are all important words, and I totally agree with it. I also listened to Councillor Audia Kelly about economic engine, and I listened to our building community out there, and I think that also I love the proposal you just gave as well. I think that's fantastic. I'm curious because we talk about a lot about renting people out, and hopefully we get them back like a library card or a library book. But I'm just curious, is there demand for that as well in our community? Do we know that Elkford, Sparwood, that those areas need that as well? So that would be my question.
We know that recruiting building officials is challenging. We know that some municipalities have an absolutely no remote work policy and others do not. And that's caused conflict when you're trying to create a sub-regional service, because someone insists that when they're working on your applications, they have to be in your office and sitting in your community. And so another person is struggling to hire a building official that's shared between two munis because one's happy with a remote building official and the other isn't. It's also asking me to predict what the Elkford development landscape is going to look like for the next 2 years is pretty difficult. I don't spend a lot of time obsessing over Elkford, but I'm very confident that we will have volume to sustain busyness for the next year. And I'm very confident that I could keep someone busy on backlog of policies that need updating, notices on title, clearing out old permits, and on improving our records management in terms of property information overall for quite some time. It just, those don't pay. Yeah.
But what you did make a comment, and I apologize, Councillor Kelly, but you did make a comment that building officials are scarce as hen's teeth. We've got 2 casuals. My inclination is to hoard them, like keep them close, set up a structure so that we don't lose them, because even keeping one as a casual, the flight risk is enormous, right? You know, there's an opportunity somewhere and off they go. And, you know, wish them luck and then we're short. So my instinct is your proposal that you've just made, and I appreciate you made it on the fly, and that feels safer to me than keeping somebody in a casual role and risk them looking for more reliable employment elsewhere. Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. Yeah, and for the record, Councillor Hamilton, I didn't mean gift. I meant we would be compensated. Nothing given away here. But I do want to put more paint on what I said previously and what Mayor Milligan just said. We have been told a lot that it's very hard to recruit building officials. And here we are with 4. Like, I just think in my world, I know I'm like the don't raise taxes girl. I get that. But I also think that it's more risky for us. I do like that proposal, but I feel the same way, Your Worship. Like, I want to hold those people tight. It seems to me that we hired someone, we beefed up that department to where we had, and apologies, Ms. Hornquist, and her partner was gone in 6 months. So we also are going to face that regardless. I mean, people's lives change and they decide to move. So I just feel that I would like to have the 2 officials if we can, and maybe your most recent proposal that you made off on the fly. And I do appreciate, CAO, that you are trying to be conservative. You know, we often give you grief, right, to be more conservative. So I have to appreciate that you've been really prudent here. But I just feel like if this is a time to take a risk, we should. I know in conversations that I've had, I know that the department would really like to establish levels of service, but I don't know how they possibly could do that if their supply doesn't meet the demand.
Councillor Ramdas.
Finally, I got a chance to speak here. Just to clarify some of these numbers, CAO, we are going to create about $1 million worth of incoming revenues because of this. Correct, CFO? Like somewhere in that ballpark, right?
Not new. Current revenue is around 590. It'll
Gotcha.
go up to $1 million. Yeah.
Go up to $1 million. That's correct. Yeah. So, and I'm just spitballing here. I'm not suggesting, like, I will support this. I think this is a great first step, and adding voice to this chorus here, we need to be a little bit more aggressive. That apart, but what I wanted to say was, if you are creating an incremental another $500,000 here in revenue, right? Like from 500 to $1 million, right? And this particular ask here is going to cost you how much again? I forget, $114,000 for the building official and 0.6 FTE or something. Like, what's the total cost that we are incurring for these 3 bodies?
The The number in the report was 310, but if we're now looking at an extra building official, that would go up by, well, from 0.4 to 1, it would go up. by
That's
about
correct.
se-
So you still have room there, is it not? Like so what I'm proposing here is if you want to go a little bit more aggressive here, you could potentially still add another body and the incremental revenue that you are anticipating can still cover an extra body is what I'm trying to say. That was one thing. It's just a suggestion here. The second thing that I wanted to talk about when I spoke about contract engineer, right? And I get your CAO, like you got to build that culture of people doing technical work in-house. I totally get that. But you really have to kind of calibrate your short-term wins with your long-term strategy here, right? And the short-term thing right now here is we've got a backlog. We got to get rid of that backlog. And when I think about a building official versus an engineer, how I think about it is the building official has, very mechanistic job scope, and they know what exactly they need to be doing. And engineers are, more problem solvers, knowledge workers. They are a little bit more sophisticated in terms of what their scope is going to look like. You can develop that skill set over a longer period of time. But for now, increasing that surge capacity via somebody who can go and deliver permits through a building official would be a better route. Have some room where you can actually hire a consulting engineer, and as these things stabilize, we can think about actually making it a full-time position. Like that would be my suggestion. Again, I would be happy if someone can actually paint the picture of how this strategy would look like.
Councillor Hamilton, then Councillor Shoesmith.
Thank you. I was actually going to ask a question very much along the lines of what Mr. Bornowski proposed with hiring a contractor per year and whether that would be feasible. So my question has been answered.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shoesmith.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. Oh gosh, sorry. I have to collect my thoughts here. I think that, there's a very real return on this investment, and there's an awful lot of upcoming work. Even if you just go with in-house stuff or stuff that this council's approved or partnered with another group for, there's enough there for several years to keep a full-time guy busy. I mean, we've got daycares approved, we've got apartments approved, we've got all sorts of developments everywhere going in. I don't think there's going to be a shortage of work for our inspectors, not in the near term or midterm future. In addition to that, the more permits we write, the more DCCs come in the door. This really is a self-sustaining thing and will be for the near term and midterm future, I suspect. One of the big issues the city has is we've got a reputation for being a bad place to do business. And I think in part that's because our planning and engineering and building officials are often under the gun with too much going on to keep up. And, we have such a backlog that gradually coming up with things does a disservice to those people waiting. I'm one of them. There's lots of us in queue waiting. I really think that this is a rare time when I'm going to say we really need to just cough up and spend the money on the staff to do the job.
Councillor Kelly. Oh, I apologize. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Your Worship. Hopefully it's just a quick question. And part of my ignorance I feel like I should probably know the answer, but I'm going to ask the question anyways. When we talk about building permits and the backlog that we're facing, what does that look like from like the permit kind of type, I guess? Are we talking about there's a backlog of 70 new single family homes being built? Are we talking about, there's 70 multifamily homes? Are we talking about like 50 decks and 20 bathroom renovations that are in the backlog? Like trying to understand the financial scale more broadly.
Yeah, your worship, through to Councillor Hamilton. Excuse me. I can look up the number of permits through Cloud Permit to look at the build type that we're looking at. It is worth noting that our current casual building officials are fairly new to the job and just are just going through their education and achieving that level 1 now. So they're working on issuing those more minor permits, and they're actually that timeline of 21 weeks is actually doesn't necessarily hold true for those types of applications, because they're able to get through them a little bit quicker. But from a financial perspective, I'd have to look at the amount of permit applications coming in. But the projections you were given are based on, again, what we've issued this year, all in, and then just a projection across an entire year if we were to issue all of our permits.
If I may just further.
Yep.
So just kind of as a bit of a more holistic response or simpler response, it's a mix of all of the above. Correct. Thank you.
Councillor Kelly, sorry about that.
Oh, no worries, Your Worship. I think everybody's pretty keen on this topic. A couple of things were said at the table. So this is going to sound really weird, CAO, so I really apologize. Is it feasible at all, because you say in your report, and I, again, not meant as a criticism, you were saying in your report that there hasn't been the opportunity to fully scope the engineering piece. So is there a world in which we hire the 2 building officials so that we then have 4? And my understanding of building officials, and forgive me as Councillor Hamilton said, my ignorance level, but I do get that, say, for example, our building official 3 can work on projects that our building official 1 cannot, right? And we are looking to attract more complex projects as well as single family dwellings, et cetera. So is there a world where we would hire the 2 building officials and do a 1-year contract with an engineer while we really scope out how the engineering piece fits in?
It is very similar through to council. When I say not fully scoped out, I mean, we don't have the detailed job description written. We know what they work on. It's what cannibalizes our manager of engineering's time and takes them away from our major capital projects. And it's why people are waiting for applications, and why when I have cranky conversations with the director and they say, well, the engineer's away on vacation for a week, so I'm not going to get a response on this, so it's going to sit a week. But it really is a development engineer. Like, we know it's a standard position that's integral to the process, but we would be writing and posting that JD immediately, and then we'd be leaning on our consulting budget, which we do keep in engineering for development engineering. We have a small consulting budget to keep us moving in the meantime, like to bolster their review and keep it going while we then recruit it. Because it takes months to recruit and then onboard and train an engineer. We don't have the luxury of the same kind of recruitment and hiring resources where you can recruit a whole bunch of people and then through attrition just keep the best. You have to be really careful about it at our scale.
Yeah, and I do worry that, and we've heard it, the worry in the community that we have a backlog. It's a bit of a pig in the python, and then we're just going to move it along and never catch up. And I think we do need to be a bit bolder here. And whether it's, 2 building officials and 1 is on contract and an engineer, like that model feels like a way to see how we can reduce that backlog and get things flowing again, and give ourselves a year, see how that goes. And we may find the revenue more than justifies what we're doing. And that feels like a really good first step in sorting this out. Yeah, please.
You may, Your Worship, also find that a director of engineering stepping in and shaping that department and starting to work on those deliverables has a different model or a concept than 4 building officials that relies on a planning technician or an in-house eng tech or additional engineering resources or something else, which is why I don't like to recommend all the staffing all at the beginning without having someone in the seat running that department. And I'm sorry, I think out loud I said Director of Engineering.
You did.
I mean Director of Planning and Development Services.
I think we knew what you meant.
My apologies.
No, thank you. Councillor Suzanne?
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. Yeah, that's all perfectly reasonable. That makes a lot of sense to me. I do have one other concern, and that is that I think it is a concern that some in the building community have shared with me, that they're worried that the money raised from these fees going through planning and paying for engineering winds up doing not planning and building things. And I think that that is a concern. We should make sure this is, tracked and allocated appropriately, because I think should they be vindicated in their concern, that would actually be doing our building community a pretty big disservice. So I just want to make that point.
Councillor Roddy Kelly?
Thanks, Your Worship, and I hesitate to bring this up, but it's partially due to I need to understand this better. Bill M216, that will not negate the need for building officials, correct? Because we would still, all those inspections and all those things would still have to happen, even if we had the professional reliance on the engineers and architects, et cetera, right?
Yeah, yes, the building code still exists. And I think you'll find those on the community side of development are pretty universally extremely concerned about the language of the bill and the lack of consultation related to it, not actually engaging with municipalities on the ground as to how the system works at all, and the outcomes that not being able to trust but verify can have and do have. You only have to look at well, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, no, thanks, CAO. And sorry, Your Worship. I'm not suggesting we endorse it. I'm just saying, okay, what if it happens? It really doesn't change the landscape of the fact that we still need building officials then, or really engineers. Okay. And I just wanted to ask too, and this is maybe a question for Director Similini. We have a lot of I know you've really been trying hard to work on resource materials, policies, and all those things, and you really literally don't have the person power to do that. So is that something building officials could also do if for some crazy reason they had spare time?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Audia Kelly, absolutely. Procedure documents, processes, things like that. It's been a goal of mine to try to communicate with our building officials and hold sort of weekly or bi-weekly meetings to start to talk about those. But again, their capacity is just so full with review that I haven't been able to hold true to that promise to them. So if there is additional capacity in the department, it might give us that little bit of leeway to hold those meetings and start to get those policies and procedures and bylaws and things like that updated.
Councillor Ramirez?
Thanks, Your Worship. I promise this will be my last thought or question, and I'll shut up. One thing, CAO, just going back to some of the comments that we heard during the initial phase here, there was a thought made by one of the people here who said there's a little bit of transparency issue in the sense building community can't seem to understand how well we are progressing. Is that true? Is that for real? That would be my one question. And second question, I apologize. I think we should take this opportunity to be also in a goal-setting mode here. We should give ourselves some ambitious goals here, where we say, 2027, let's say, start of the building season, we should have zero backlog, something like that. And then to Councillor McIsaac's earlier point there, maybe in our next session during budget, maybe you should come back, CAO, and say, if I want to be at 2027 zero backlog, what does my organization need to look like, right? Commit to that and then move forward from there. Anyway, that was my second point. My first point was around the communication and being able to report back to the building community how well we are doing on all the recommendations from McKinley.
Yeah, Your Worship, through to council. Just to clarify, you're speaking of like an overall communications tool, or just like on an individual permit basis?
I think how I heard from the building community is just that they seem to not get a good feel for, how well we are progressing. Again, I could be wrong, but you guys need to clarify with us here.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think that, again, capacity issues and it would be nice to do like there's a monthly building officials report, for example, right? And it just looks at the number of permits issued and the value, and like it's very, very basic. It doesn't actually contextualize what's happening in the department. And I know that we've reported to council before on, all the points we touched on in the McElhaney development approvals reports and the policies and things we put into place. But we could surely look at doing a better job of like some form of newsletter or something like that goes out. But again, it's having the capacity and the time and the staff to be able to pump that out on a scheduled basis, right? We do meet monthly or bi-monthly with the Canadian Home Builders Association, like the national representative out of Kamloops. And we share with them during those meetings updates on where we are and what we're doing. So the members of that Canadian Home Builders Association should be getting some information from them as well, but I don't necessarily want to put the responsibility on them to do it. It's we should own it and respond as well.
Mr. Bornowski.
Thank you. If I may, I just want to address two comments. One, just to be really explicitly clear, the fees that we charge both for building and for development are not planning department fees, but are service area fees. And so they're not fees specifically generated through and for the planning department, but they're for building and development services as a service area that includes staff in planning, building, corporate admin, legislative services. And so it's not a sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul scenario. They were modeled and designed to fund this kind of a collaborative approach to the service area or a multi-department approach to the service area. So just some assurance, I absolutely agree with you. We do not want to take those fees and start hiring lifeguards or using them, like misusing them in any way. Our commitment would be to target the use of those fees to development and building services. And then B, thank you. I didn't understand the question. I think you're talking about transparency related to the LGDAP or the DAPA report, all of the objectives, and I agree. We need to bring together, wrap up. And then finally, when you talk about moving into a goal setting scenario, we have a great acting director of planning. I think it would be a disservice to him and the team if me as the CAO without a director and someone long-term accountable for the outcomes in that department were setting goals without having a gut check with that director who's then going to be accountable for reaching them. And so I just don't want to jump the gun with a seat empty in the department and say, this is our target, this is what we need to get there, and have someone come in and say, no. Fundamentally, I disagree, and not have had that collaborative work inside to model it. If you appreciate what I mean. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, this has been a great discussion. Your proposal before us, Mr. Bornowski, I'm just curious, and I'll look around the table if anybody's, we heard a proposal you sort of made on the fly. Like I don't know that particularly if we bookend it as a year contract for one of the full-time building officials, unduly hampers the incoming director in terms of staffing, in terms of how they want to set up the department. They have an opportunity there to, and I'm just looking to council if anybody wants to move that, or if you, Mr. Bornowski, want to build that into your resolution. I'm not presupposing an outcome, but I'm just curious if council would be supportive of that. Councilor Kelly?
I really want to see us have the 2 extra officials, so I would move.
Okay. Do you want to take some time to write the resolution, or are we comfortable?
Yeah, if I could have a minute with the corporate officer.
Okay.
We'll craft that and then we'll check in with Bryn Burdett and make sure that his next report is prepped for that as well.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So 5 minutes?
5 minutes is tons. Thank
Ms.
you. Chair.
Rhodes? Thank you. Yeah.
Us to create a resolution for essentially halfway between scenario 1 and 2. So 1 full-time building official, 1 full-time engineer, 1 year contract. That's what you're asking.
Full-time. Yeah.
Still got a whole other thing to do.
Thank you, Ms. Rhodes. Welcome back. So I'll turn to our corporate officer. Do we have a revised proposed
Yes, Your Worship.
resolution?
The staff recommendation, the first resolution is that council approve the allocation of funds for the conversion of the existing temporary 0.6 FTE planning coordinator to a permanent 1.0 FTE municipal clerk 2 planning coordinator position.
Mover? Councillor Nixon, seconded by Councillor McIsaac. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you.
Second resolution is that council approve the allocation of funds to add 1 full-time regular building official 1 position and 1 full-time temporary for a minimum 1-year term.
Moved by Councillor Roddy Kelly, seconded by Councillor Shoesmith. Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Third resolution is that council approve the allocation of funds to add 1 full-time equivalent FTE position within the engineering department to support development and infrastructure engineering.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor McIsaac. Any discussion? All those in favor? And finally,
Final one is that council directs staff to incorporate these changes and related budget adjustments into the upcoming 2026 to 2030 financial plan process.
moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Roddy Kelly. Any discussion? Councillor Hamilton?
Just a procedural tongue-in-cheek question, but what happens if we don't pass this one after passing the others?
I think you know what happens. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Simulini and Mr. Boranowski, for that robust discussion. Now, stepping slightly backwards to go forwards again, item 11.3, 2025 to 2029 5-year financial plan bylaw amendment from our Director of Finance. This is it. This is where it all happens. Mr. Burdett.
Thank you again, Mayor Milligan. Well, council, remainder of the public. Tonight, I will walk through the proposed amendment to our 2025 financial plan. Just a really brief agenda, starting with why do we want to amend our financial plan? We'll then talk about year 2 of the 2025 financial plan, how exactly that works with respect to purchasing larger and or more urgent capital items, and what the goal is with the year 2 amendment. Just a point of clarity, year 2 of our current budget is 2026. So anytime I say year 2, I do mean 2026, but I just want to be clear on that phrasing because this is not the 2026 budget we're talking about tonight. Everything we discussed tonight will also be discussed as part of that 2026 budget process. But tonight is year 2 of the 2025 budget, which is a different bylaw altogether.
Thank you for that clarity.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening. And then after purchasing, I have a slide on what was just discussed, the planning department, and then a schedule for upcoming budget meetings. So why amend? Community charter is clear that a municipality cannot budget for a deficit and that a municipality may amend its plan during the year for unplanned expenditures. We don't actually have any of these items as they relate to our 2025 budget, but we have had these in the past. Another reason to amend is that we can also amend future years or year 2 of a financial plan. Staff believe it's a benefit to get started on some of our bigger or more urgent items scheduled for next year as early as possible before local and provincial suppliers and contractors have their work plans set for the year. As you can see by the yellow highlight, we had just over $30 million worth of projects in our year 2 budget. Staff does have the legal authority to continue operating into year 2 using our year 2 plan. That said, it is considered best practice to refresh and update council of these larger and or more urgent projects Also, sometimes we do add projects into year two as the year moves on. But again, this is just to begin the purchasing process. So any larger projects over 100,000 do still come back to council for ultimate approval of purchase. So this is now our fourth year doing a report like this, 2022 being the first. We had 6 vehicles, a backhoe that we wanted to start purchasing early back then. 2023, we had the work at the reservoir, the MCC motor control center at the aquatic center, I think. 2024, we had the road work at Alpine Trails. All of those were on budget and all good examples of why this report has been working the last 4 years. So of this 30 million, I would like to discuss with council roughly 3.3 million worth of capital projects for the year 2 budget amendment. I won't get into too much detail into each of these individual projects as there is detail in your agenda package. And Ms. Weir is still here to answer questions if council has any. But the biggest one is the $1.5 million UV installation at our Ferry Creek water source. 900,000 to begin replacing high-risk assets as defined by the recent IICP update, which we talked about earlier this evening. There's a wastewater line under Coal Creek that has become exposed since the creek has shifted, which has accelerated the need to replace this asset. This was on the plan for 2029.
Sorry, Mr. Burdett, and is that realignment, does it take it out of the creek and put it under the bridge, attach it to the bridge? Was that my understanding? I just wanted to be clear on that.
Yes, it takes it out of the creek and brings it up onto the bridge, and sort of there's some work to get it in line with the bridge around the creek banks.
Thank you, but the water line will stay in the creek?
Correct. We're going to design the dual utility so that we create a system that we can attach the water to in the future, but the water is still well protected, and therefore we're not recommending urgently advancing the moving it to the bridge.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I thought I understood that from the report. I just wanted to be clear. I appreciate it. Councillor Ramnas?
Thanks, Your Worship. While the director is here, can you remind us the UV treatment facility that will ensure that the interior health's variance can be met with, right? Like that, wasn't that the connection here?
Yes, Mayor, through to Councillor, that is a permit currently on our condition to operate that they require us to provide a second type of disinfection on top of chlorination.
Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you. And on the topic of the sanitary wastewater realignment, I hope we're aiming to do that and the trail kind of concurrently so that we're not shutting down that pathway for the entirety of the year, summer?
Yes, we will aim to do them concurrently. We haven't decided that they'll necessarily be under the same contract. And also the CP one is a little bit more complex because it requires CP approval, which we do not have yet. So we will be working to get that from CP. So there is a chance that that project could be delayed beyond the realignment project if CP doesn't permit us to build that trail.
And sorry, Ms. Weir, that CPKC rail trail, given its proximity to the rail, does that require, like, is 130,000 enough? Does that require their oversight that we have to pay for? Like, I know there's some weird clause in their operating contract.
To be determined.
Okay.
The 130,000 is our best estimate based on known costs in the area for permitting and design and construction of that. But we don't have a good level of detail on what CP is going to require. This is with minimal CP requirements.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Sorry, is your hand up, Councillor Adi Kelly? No. No. Thank you. Mr. Burdett?
And then the last one on this list is some small network upgrades, particularly at our ops facility where the internet is notoriously slow. Just starting the purchasing process on that. And then there's 6 smaller projects listed here. Bossio Road trunk or line leak detection, sanitary CCTV, confirmed condition of high priority replacements, public access barrier, the landfill multi-fields feasibility study, which was discussed earlier, Coal Creek water crossing realignment, and some construction materials to build 2 sheds to rent to user groups. I would like to point out that of these projects, one of them is actually going to be funded with our DCC funds, which we have yet to utilize since I've been here. So that's something worth celebrating too, and not using just our reserves or taxation.
I'm sorry, which one is that?
That one is the UV treatment.
Okay, excellent.
This slide here has a lot of numbers, but it's our budgeted 2025 ending reserve balances. The reserve mainly affected by tonight's amendments is the water reserve. The ending balance of that will be down to around 55,000 at the end of 2025. But with my earlier report detailing the start of a long-term plan, staff are hopeful that we're moving in the right direction to start saving enough money to complete the much needed infrastructure replacements in those utilities.
Councillor Ramirez?
Thanks, Your Worship. It just occurred to me, Director, with the active transportation not available, the funding from the provincial government not available now, do we have any capital in 2026 for any road works at all?
Mayor, through to council, no, we haven't proposed any roadworks for 2026. We were following our sort of plan that we've been working towards over the last few years of saving 2 years of reserve contributions to do a larger scale road project. We did do some design work that was funded as part of the current year on a road project, but ultimately the annual contribution is not large enough to complete a meaningful scope that, you know, begins and ends in a good spot. And therefore, we think it's better to do a roads project every 2 years, and then you leverage, you know, higher volumes of asphalt and gravel works and stuff and attract better contractors. And then also don't disturb neighborhoods for not a complete project.
Thank you. Further?
Just not happy, Your Worship. I wish we had, I don't know, like again, it's what it is. I think it's the ebb and flow of municipal finance here, but would have been great if there was another road project this year. And I appreciate that we don't have the funding to cover a meaningful project. Yeah, but not happy still.
Mr. Burdick.
Thank you. And then this slide, I'm actually embarrassed to pull up. I was trying to do this during the last presentation. But this is the table on the right there is the table in the bylaw that's up for readings tonight. And this has the adjustments in it for an extra 70,000 for the extra building official. Okay. And I think Ms. McElwee has another version of the bylaw for council's consideration that has this updated table.
Okay.
And then I would just like to point out that doing it this way with a year 2 amendment is really just the fastest way to give staff authority to start hiring. We will be, as we go through the 2026 budget, we'll get into these numbers in more detail. This really is just a placeholder, so we have some extra costs and revenue in there.
What are you hiding in there, Mr.
Your Worship, if I may, if you refresh the agenda, you'll be able to see it in the agenda that is online.
Oh, we trust him.
And then just before I close, this is the still tentative schedule for our 2026 budget meetings. I just don't have dates nailed down for potential like BBB sessions with the chamber or the other public budget engagement sessions that I talked about in earlier meetings, but I will update council as I get those firmed up. But these, so the dates on here should be the main council meetings related to the budget process.
Thank you.
And that's it. Thank you. Happy to answer questions.
Councillor Kelly.
This is probably out of left field, but I was just wondering about recreation feasibility studies. Is it ever possible to use RMI money to fund those, or is that a no-no CAO? Just because they potentially are tourist attractions.
Yeah, I don't believe so. would have to look into it and see. Sorry.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I don't think they qualify, but it's
Yeah.
a fair question. Let's run it to ground if we can.
I was just curious because, right, if let's say, sport tourism is the thing, right? Where some towns are tournament towns, like Kamloops is an example of a tournament town, right? And they bring in a lot of revenue with tournament tourism.
Thank you. Mr. Bernays.
If I can, Your Worship, the feasibility study or pre-planning, no. Up to 10% of a project cost can be allocated to the design work, but we can't use a resort development strategy. We wouldn't get a project approved if it was to undertake a feasibility study or, they'd say no, where they want to see direct impact on the visitor experience.
Mr. Burdick.
I just would like to clarify something earlier in discussion with Councillor Ramadas. Ms. Weir said we will need to rebuild the road over the proposed water main replacement project, which is still in its early planning stages, but will be a few blocks of road in the annex. It's just funded from water as part of that, of the water main.
Okay. Councillor Ramadas.
It just opens up another question that I had, Your Worship. So this is on top of a water main. Is that right? So, okay. I mean, I'm still reading through the IICP report. I'm still trying to understand the ins and outs of it. So given that there is only one small project at the annex in 2026, if you just zoom out over the longer term, does that have any impact in terms of, say there were few priorities in 2026 and we didn't accomplish them without the funding required? Would it deteriorate our linear assets moving into 2027? You know what I mean? Like, are we sacrificing something because we did not do X, Y, and Z in 2026 with roadworks?
Mayor, through to Councillor. We're not sacrificing anything in my eyes because we're still investing the money into the transportation reserve to be spent in 2026. So as long as you build that reserve, we can do twice as much next year. So we're not, in terms of the longer time frame of the IICP and addressing risk, we're not really not addressing the risk. We're just doing it the year after.
Thank you. With that, I will ask our corporate officer to read the recommendation.
The staff recommendation is that 2025 to 2029 5-year financial plan bylaw number 252720 2025, amendment bylaw number 2541 2025 be given first, second and third readings.
Moved by Councillor Shoesmith, second by Councillor Hamilton. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Good report, Mr. Burdick.
Thank you.
You numbered my pages for me. Well done. I just wondered, moving along to item 14.1 correspondence, of course, it's the submission on Bill M216, the Professional Reliance Act from UBCM. And we saw earlier today a resolution from Village of Radium in opposition to the bill. Did we want to do something at our council table in that regard, or a resolution that supports the position of UBCM? in its requests for deeper consultation, et cetera. Thoughts, both? Councillor McIsaac and then Councillor Ramnes.
Thank you, Worship. I actually think we should pass our own resolution as council voicing our concerns about this particular thing. But I also think either in that or as a separate resolution, we should be supporting the UPCM initiative. They're the ones that are most likely to get the most airtime on this. So adding our voice to that, I think, is positive as well. It can be done either together or separately.
Okay. Councillor Ramnes?
Exactly the same, both.
Okay. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. I fully support going both. But I just had a question for staff and their perspective. And for my understanding or interpretation of this new bill, how would the situation we experienced with Lubers have been affected by this bill?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to council. I would say that the Lubers scenario would be to happen more often. And what I mean by that is there was an engineered solution or an engineered document that went through or from an architect, and the building was built below flood construction level when it wasn't supposed to be. In our case, we had advised on what that flood construction level was, and unfortunately, the builder or whoever did the project missed it. And I think that if there wasn't that oversight, more things would be missed. We've actually had situations which I can't elaborate on, but where engineered solutions were proposed and put into place and began to fail, and we went back and fixed them. So again, there is definitely potential for not good outcomes.
And I can think of at least one example here in the city where we relied on an engine, like it was as I understand it, it was a geotechnical engineer's report that resulted in a failure that landed us third-partied in a court case. So it's, I prefer Mr. Bornowski's sort of phrasing, or trust but verify. I think that.
Yeah, Your Worship. And we've had other situations even with subdivisions where we get a geotech report that says everything's good, and then we put a shovel in the ground and discover that it's not. So again, I could see this causing a lot of confusion in the building community and getting our hands tied.
Thank you. Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. I had a couple comments on this that I want to make, if I may. One, this is an awful bill. This is an example of appearing to do something while not actually doing anything. There's absolutely nothing preventing our staff from developing a relationship with a certified professional and accepting input from them, because they've had a long-standing relationship and understand. What they're proposing here, we can already do by choice, right? So this is really poor. Removing the ability for staff to intercede on poor development in advance, and instead moving the resolution of that at a later time to some sort of centralized department in Victoria. The likelihood that that's going to make the development process more efficient is about as likely as I'm going to be mistaken as the new yoga instructor at the BBB tomorrow. It's probably not going to happen. What I really dislike about this is the real goal of this particular bill is to paint local government staff as the problem. That's the goal here, is we know there's a big development problem and it's these guys' fault, and we're going to try to create a solution that goes around them. And like, shame on them. In the absence of actually developing a solution that provides the resources that municipalities and local government need to meet this problem head on, instead we're going to cast blame and derision. Shame on them. So I can't state too strongly how we should be wording this as far as our criticism of this particular bill.
Thank you. Councillor Schussman.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. I'm a little more staid, and fence city than my colleagues on this one. In my lifetime, we've went from 1 to 3 inspections on a build to like many. And our society as a whole has spent ever more on managing itself. And everything becomes more expensive, more hyper-regulated, less free. And really the core of the thing is less individual responsibility and reliance and more oversight and bureaucracy. And so while an attempted shot at that ratchet, which I despise, I like that people want to try and roll that back. I do think that in practice, this is, like Councillor McIsaac said, probably going to do the opposite of what's intended. So while I really like the sentiment, while I yearn for the days of just building stuff, because that was nice, I don't think this ends well. So support the rest of council on this.
Thank you. Yeah, at least until we craft a resolution here. So I would ask for a mover and a seconder to extend beyond 10 o'clock. Councillor Ramdass moves. Councillor Audia reluctantly seconds. All those in favor? Opposed? Oh. Councillor McIsaac is opposed. And he wants it recorded. Yeah, which is a vote in favor, as we know. So can someone propose, well, do we need 2 resolutions or 1 resolution? I guess someone propose a resolution for us.
Well, I would propose that we write a letter opposing it along the same vein as what we saw from Radium. Thank you. Sorry, that name escaped me there for a moment. But also, I would consider I think we should consider passing a separate resolution. Specifically, it says we support UPCM's efforts here in engagement with the province in order to either terminate this bill or at least shape it into something that's more likely to be valuable.
Yeah, please.
It's been a long night. So proposed recommendation for council consideration would be that the mayor work with the CAO to provide a letter opposing the province's Bill M216/2025 Professional Reliance Act, and that council endorse the UBCM submission to the province on Bill M216/2025 Professional Reliance Act.
Moved by Councillor McIsaac, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Ramdass, are you just voting in favor? Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Perfect. Unanimous. Thank you. That brings us to item 15, reports from councillors. And we did have a motion to extend, so we're good. And I'll start with Councillor Ramdass.
Thanks, Your Worship. I think the biggest one that I was involved in the last 2 weeks was definitely the Southeast Alberta and Southwest BC Councillors Conference. That was really fascinating. I just we are across the border, and the council members there and us, we have a little bit of a cultural difference. And I couldn't point to what exactly it was. It was refreshing to see perspective that is a little different from ours. Not necessarily better or worse. It's just different. That was really well executed there by Sparrow Council. Thanks for your speech there. It was really well thought out. You know, you covered all the bases there as far as our achievements are concerned. That was one thing, and I had something else, Your Worship. I forget what it was. If I can come back later.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too attended the same dinner in Sparwood with our colleagues from the region. Town Hall was also within the last, since the last council report. Thank you to everybody in town who came out and spoke at that. Other than that, really nothing to report.
Thank you. Councillor Shoesmith?
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. Another coat of paint on the regional conference. Was glad to hear that Mayor Wilkes is working with his partners across the border on the Highway 3 corridor. I think that's of huge importance to us here, so I'm happy to see that's moving. I'd like to thank everybody that came out to our town hall. That was rather nice. We had that last week as well, I believe. It was good to get some engagement, and just a congratulation to Jen on receiving the Magic Spiritus Award. It's good stuff. Other than that, I don't really have anything other than just a dread for winter.
Councillor Nixon?
Dread for winter, come on. I don't ski. Yep, a town hall. I attended town hall. That was quite interesting. That's our last one as this council. That was, yeah, it was fun. Council Cafe, we also we discussed the obtrusive snowflake, but there was no resolution on that movement. I attended the book launch at the Fernie Library as well, which was neat. Eleanor Florence, and just you can't imagine the arriving homesteading, let alone as a single woman in the 1800s. It's crazy. Anyways, and then lastly, I attended the Emily Youth Foundation Cheesemas event, which was super fun up at the Cirque. And just to let everybody know that all the funds that they raise are actually spent in the valley, and they support all the kids here. And there's no provincial reimbursement for the Emily Bride and Youth Foundation. It is actually spent, and they're usually oversubscribed. And it's everything from swim lessons to ski lessons to anything. So just it's a great cause, that's for sure. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Artie Kelly?
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm slightly a little more boring because I had to miss a few things. I do want to say thanks to everyone that came to the town hall, and it was a little bit bittersweet because it's the last one of this term, and who knows who will be at the next one. But I do appreciate that folks came out and spoke. I sadly had to miss the dinner because my husband got a new knee, and he's really a lot of fun right now. It's kind of like, oh, there's a bear in the house. I'll just back up. Council Cafe coming up, just as a reminder to folks, I'm really going to try and make it to this one. It's hard because I'm at work, but they have been excellent, and I appreciate the council members that go. And just, I do want to say that Emily Bryden, when I was president of minor hockey, they are such a good organization and so generous to many families that otherwise would not be able to put their kids in sports, because it's really expensive to put your kids in sports, and it's these are tough times. So if you are able to support them in some way, please do, because they're very good to the kids in the community.
Thank you. Youth Councillor Parmar?
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. I haven't really been able to attend many of the events because I do have school, but I did get to go to the holiday kickoff a couple weeks ago, and I thought that was really well put together, and I really enjoyed getting to attend it.
You should let me know. I would got you up on stage to count down the fireworks. Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. Much the same as everyone else. I too quite enjoyed the elected officials dinner. I too am a very big fan of meeting up with other elected officials and hearing other perspectives, and I find it very valuable at this table. I also was at the holiday kickoff, enjoyed it immensely. What a well attended event. Good luck trying to get into some of the stores downtown. They were chock-a-block, which was great to see. I also want to express my appreciation for the people that came out to the town hall. In fact, I'd like to express my appreciation for people who just engage with us. It's so incredibly valuable. And to that end, I'm scolding you all because hardly anyone showed up for the last council cafe. And we're lonely, and then I have to listen to Nick, Troy talk. And so if you're out there and you're thinking, geez, I wonder if I should go to the council cafe, the answer is yes. Please come. We really do enjoy it. And it's such a nice atmosphere to have a conversation about the issues for you in the community. So I hope you'll come.
Thank you. Councillor Ramadas, you remembered?
Yes, Your Worship, thanks for indulging me in this. Yeah, the only thing that I wanted to talk about was we had a good discussion on the discretionary grant committee, myself, Councillor McIsaac,
okay.
and Councillor Hamilton. I think the dual intake between spring and fall, I think it's a work in progress. We've got a couple of ideas that hopefully we'll bring up to the council in, I don't know when, but that was good conversation. 6 organizations that we will be supporting.
Excellent.
And also we have taken some decisions that will enable us to have some flexibility when new applications come in spring. We have some money left over from our decision from the fall. So
thank you. Yeah, helpful. You had your hand up, Councillor Schussman?
I did, Mayor Milligan. Thank you very much. I actually also forgot 2 quick things here. I was also able to participate in the Phyllis Slay Day down at the bargain store. And for those who don't know, they donated quite a lot of money and food to the Salvation Army. And on that note, it's Christmas time and they are looking for people to man the kettles. If you see me out there manning a kettle, feel free to come up and say hi.
Thank you. I will. I'm also manning kettles. Yeah, not to repeat too much of what's been already said. Great turnout at the council town hall. Very much appreciate people coming out and share their thoughts and passions. Thank you, Councillor Audia Kelly. Yeah, the council cafe this coming week, Monday, December 15th. On Thursday last week, I attended a Building Attainable Housing Symposium in Radium, and Katie Taylor from the Elk Valley Family Society gave a very impressive presentation on their portfolio that they're building both here in Fernie. So the 2 projects in Fernie on 692 3rd Avenue and the childcare and housing project near the Aquatic Center, and their Timbers Landing 2 in Sparwood. They're incredibly busy, and really, really good conversation at that symposium, and lots of people impressed about what's happening in Fernie and the Elk Valley. The holiday train arrives this Sunday, December 14th, at the Arch Station in support of the Salvation Army Food Bank. And this year's musical performers are the Bare Naked Ladies. And so that's be great fun. And as Councillor Shoesmith said, they're still looking for kettle volunteers. So you can stop by the office and they have a calendar and you can write your name on there and put it in your own calendar. So you come out and support. The last thing I wanted to touch on was I had a conversation with one of the principals of the Fernie Food Security Society. And they continue to have a really positive impact in this community. And over the Christmas break, they'll support 142 children in Fernie with healthy food over the break. And they're doing really good work. And they're out raising money with stickers like the one, the Fernie sticker newly on my computer here. For their program, Full Bellies, Full Hearts campaign, aimed at bridging 672 unsecured meals for children in our community. So I'm so grateful we were able to support them at the outset, and they've really blossomed into a contributor in this community. So kudos to them. And unless there's anything else, I will adjourn the meeting. And thank you, everybody, for sticking with it tonight. It was a long one and really great discussion.